John sent around the minutes of the last meeting, and people have had time to review them. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes as submitted?
I would make that motion.
Pat? And Barbara seconds it. And
I think there was an email, did you pick up on that, John, that some of the comments in regard to the CAB had been someone's opinion, not the opinion of the CAB?
Yes, yeah.
That's been taken
I'm
care of?
sort of distracted because I'm still trying to
Yeah.
get the new agenda up on the screen.
I had just one question on that. Was she there representing Sheila Dugan, who was unable to make it and was supposed to be going?
No.
She said she was there representing herself.
Okay.
Yeah, so the
And she
minutes
said-
were
and she said
revised that says
yeah.
it's, the language is Jeannie Wertheimer
Per-
spoke about the CAB. The other thing is there was, I got from Valerie the language of the draft mission statement and her notes on that process. So I'll include those as an attachment also to the minutes.
Okay, so minutes approved then? All in favor? Anyone who has to recuse himself for any issue about what we're talking about? Yeah. Then let's go ahead. I changed the agenda so that we could give the public a chance to comment on the bylaws. But before we do that, I think Lori McFadden has been our attorney for some time on this, ever since last April. And she has guided us, the work group of several people spent many hours on the bylaws, and they really deserve our thanks. It was Barbara Demarest, Midge, Ann Larson, and Barbara Graff, and they worked a great deal on it. But I wanted Lori to explain why we did this and give us some heads up about what the document, the first sections 1 through 6, which are before you, what those sections involve, because if all goes well, I would like to have a motion this evening passed by the board that we accept those first sections. Laura, Laura's all yours.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I thought that, first of all, I also want to thank the working group. There were a lot of hours, a lot of really incredible analysis and good comments, and everyone just had the best interests of the station in their minds and hearts the whole time. So I think it's been a great process. But I thought for those of you who were not in the working group and for the public that we should first start with letting you know the reasons why we felt we had to amend and restate the bylaws, and there are several. Some of the provisions in the current bylaws are inconsistent with New York law. For example, there's a provision in the current bylaws that provides that when vacancies are filled, the newly elected person will fill out the remainder of the previous person's term. Under New York law, they can only serve until the annual meeting. Some provisions in the current bylaws are inconsistent with the requirements of the Federal Communications Act, particularly open meetings. There are provisions about going into closed sessions that are inconsistent, so we wanted to address those. The current bylaws are also missing some provisions that are sort of universally included: conflicts policy, non-discrimination policy. And information in the current ones tended to be scattered, a bit hard to follow, and we were looking for a more logical flow, something where when you needed information, you knew where to get it, it was easy to find, and it was clear. Another reason was that in December, the governor signed the New York Not-for-Profit Revitalization Act, the biggest reform of New York nonprofit law in 40 years. And that changed some things, so that goes into effect, for the most part, the 1st of July. So we wanted to make sure the bylaws were up to speed with that. And that included some provisions like there were no more standing and ad hoc committees, but different committees of the board and of the corporation. There were new definitions, including entire board, related party transactions. There are audit oversight requirements now and requirements for a conflicts policy. Also, fueling this revision was a desire to incorporate some of the requirements of the Federal Communications Act right into the bylaws so that it would be clear what the organization had to do to comply with those requirements. Also, a desire to require the board to take steps to ensure that the compensation of any employees was fair and reasonable to the corporation, and that any contract was fair and reasonable. These existed beforehand, but there was a desire to put them right in there so that it would be part of the procedures of the organization. And also a desire to clarify the procedures for the volunteer election and the definition of a voting volunteer. So those were all the reasons that this revision was undertaken, and it's taken a lot of time. Tonight we have just the first 6 articles on behalf of the working group to present to you all. The document is large, and we felt it was more manageable to do a portion of it at the time. And there was also a practical reason to address these articles because they do include the provisions for the volunteer election, and as that's coming up and there are time constraints on that, we wanted to make sure that the staff was able to move ahead with the current requirements on that. I don't know if everyone has a copy of these in front of them. Sonia has some
We have some
extras.
extra
I have a
copies.
couple of extras.
Anybody need a copy?
And I guess I should ask if you all had a chance to look over these, and so everyone's, so let me know if I should slow down in any place and anyone needs more information, but I'll start from the assumption that everyone has read them and has looked at them. There were some areas that Sonia circulated in an email that I felt would be important for people to focus on. And so perhaps the best way, this isn't too long, is to, I don't know, what do you think, to go through and point out the areas of particular focus and see if people comments on those? The first initial part, name. Your question?
Was this gonna be any different than what Mirja had walked us through in the previous meeting? 'Cause
Some of it is different,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yes. The working group and I, we had a long meeting and we did a lot of tightening and polishing and I think some changes. One of the things that came out of that meeting, which is Article 4 here, is that there was a desire to actually insert into the bylaws compliance with the requirements of the Federal Communications Act. This was, whether this is in the bylaws or not, as long as WJFF receives funding from the CPB, they're subject to those requirements. But as an emphasis, it was felt that it was good to have it right in this document so that anyone looking at procedures, you couldn't miss it. So that is a new article that's in there. The only other thing that I should point out on this page is that we specified WJFF is not a membership corporation in the sense of New York not-for-profit law. And that's often a confusing concept because the station has a lot of members. But this was to sort of clarify that while there are not members in a governance sense for New York nonprofit law, there are members who are denominated members because of their contributions to the station. So that was to clarify. So compliance with the requirements of the Federal Communications Act. We're attaching as Appendix A to these bylaws the CPB requirements so that they'll come right along with this. We didn't want to take the entire requirements and dump them into the bylaws. It would just make it too vast. So we picked out things that were really key and then constantly reference the appendix to encourage people to always refer to that. So I don't know if there are any questions on the first 4 articles. Okay. So moving along to the Board of Trustees. In the previous bylaws, a lot of this was not spelled out, so a good portion of this is taken right out of the New York not-for-profit law, and then where there were areas that were flexible, the working group, and we worked on this. It starts out really by delineating the board's powers and the board's duties. Then into the number, and here we specify between 7 and 15, which allows a range. As you probably know, a New York not-for-profit cannot have fewer than 3 directors. One thing that changed with the New York Not-for-Profit Revitalization Act, it was the definition of entire board, and now that definition, which benefits nonprofits, means the number of trustees elected at the most recent election, and that's important in determining quorum. Before it was, if it was a range, it was a higher number. Qualification, 18 years of age, in good standing, and a citizen, which I didn't realize that Ann and Barbara pointed out to me as a requirement for being a radio station. The first section, I think, really that needs focus and comment back is election. And in here, we incorporated not only the election by the board, but also the whole process for election by the voting volunteers. And to do that, we broke it down into the definition, what counted and didn't count toward the threshold, public announcement and dispute resolution, how the whole process worked, and the ineligibility of current trustees to vote in that election, because if they did, it would give them 2 votes, which didn't seem fair. So I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions or disagreements with how it's drafted. Excellent. All right.
I have, Lori,
Yes.
I have one question about the 36 volunteers who are at or close to the 36-hour threshold.
Yep.
Must submit a record of their hours. That really puts the onus on the volunteer. Would it be appropriate for the staff to identify those folks and contact them rather than wait for them to contact us? Does that make sense? Does this prohibit that? Does this encourage that? This doesn't.
I don't think it prohibits that in any way. I think it does put the onus on it, and I think the mechanism for that is the list is posted, and there are time things to allow enough time. And if someone doesn't see their name on the list, they can come to you guys with their, we were just trying to incorporate some mechanism that if somebody was close or someone had forgotten.
If they see their, that makes good sense.
Okay. Let me see, so removal is for cause. We put in that one of among the possible circumstances constituting cause was someone who just repeatedly didn't come to meetings, so they just effectively weren't a trustee. The next, though, provision that we thought was really worth extra consideration was leave of absence. And, you know, everyone understands that something may happen to someone, an illness, or they have to be away for a couple of months, but they still want to be a trustee. But I think that the question here, the way we've drafted this in the working group was that the number of sitting trustees shall not fall below 9. And I guess my question for the board is, are you comfortable with that number? That would allow right now 3 trustees to be on leave of absence. And that could be tough.
Just a question, I think you said that our minimum number of trustees was 7, and now we're saying we can't fall below 9. That seems inconsistent.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, you're right, the actual minimum number of elected trustees holding office is 7. But if there are trustees who are already elected, but they want a leave of absence for 4 months, we were trying to think of a way not to, I mean, I don't think that you want a situation where out of 12 trustees, you would have 5 people on leave of absence. I don't think that would bode well for good governance. So I think it's a difference between the minimum number elected and those elected but who are temporarily not present.
So maybe it should be as a percentage rather than as an absolute number, because if we only have 7 trustees, you know, which is the minimum number that,
I see what you, I see exactly what you're saying. I see completely
so
what you're
maybe
saying.
it ought to be, you know, we can't have more than
Like 10%.
10% or 20%, whatever it might be.
If there's somebody on leave of absence, how does that affect the quorum?
Well, you see, this is, I think this is the issue, and I think this is an actual question of, a lot of bylaws do not provide for leave of absence, so that's really a question for you all, and that's not, you don't legally have to have that there's a leave of absence. You could actually have a situation where, you probably didn't have it in the bylaws, and you could deal with it on a case-by-case basis. I have some discomfort with this, because I think it could put the board in a difficult position. The way we've structured it in here is to be a non-voting member, and I think as non-voting, they would not be, the quorum would still be a majority of who was left. But I think you have to think about what's best for the organization. Should it be no more than one person? Should it be at all? We had talked about 4 months, 6 months. If someone is absent for 6 months, that's a half a
That's
year.
bad.
That's a lot of meetings.
That's not good.
So, this is a decision for all of you guys to see what you're comfortable with and what you think works best for the station.
So, when we talked about this before then, I thought that maybe we had two possibilities, which is one, to leave it out altogether, and then the individual who maybe had a restoration of health or family health, they would then ask the board for the leave of absence, and the board could then vote on that, and they could discuss the time if we wanted the 4 months, but we don't have to have it. So if we
That's
didn't have
correct.
it, then the individual could just ask us.
I think so, yeah. I don't think that, it's not something that's in the New York not-for-profit law. It's more trying to, anticipate what might be possible. But I think the risk here is that, and you guys are all a totally hands-on board, but the role of the board is to govern the station. And if you have too many people not able to govern the station, then it's harder to get a quorum, it's harder to do business. So I don't know if.
How many absences before you were?
I think
not in good
we have
standing?
three consecutive unexcused, something like that. But a leave of absence might be someone saying, my spouse is being posted to Paris for 4 months. I don't want to leave the board, but I gotta go to Paris. I'd want to go.
Suffer. Barbara,
We
yeah.
do have a provision for phone, I mean, there was a time difference to Paris, but there's a lot of provisions for taking part in the
That's
meeting
true,
through other
absolutely
means.
true.
So that
So it
would,
would probably be more, the circumstance would probably be more kind of a dire health circumstance that would take somebody out of commission for a few months.
And you do have a circuit breaker built in, because it has to be approved. If the board chooses not to approve it,
It does.
then,
So
Yeah.
perhaps to that, something to think about might be not to be specific about number, but instead to put something in that would be more to the effect that the board could consider a request for a leave of absence.
On a case-by-case.
On a case-by-case basis.
I think that's much better.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think
so. I think that's better too. Because you're right, there's a lot of ways if somebody's away, they can still participate.
Lori, I had a question on an earlier article, if it's okay to backtrack for just a second. Article 3, just a simple sentence. God forbid, something terrible happens to the building in Jeffersonville and we need to build a new office. Does this say that we have to build it in Jeffersonville, or does this say that if it goes somewhere else, the bylaws is this just a statement of where the office is?
It's a statement, and I think that this is actually also in the certificate of incorporation, and, which I have with me, let me just double check, because I think we pulled the language right from there. It also does not prevent the organization from having a temporary office elsewhere or other offices. All right, the certificate of incorporation is the purposes for which to own, operate, and maintain a Federal Communications Commission licensed educational, non-commercial radio station in the village of Jeffersonville, Sullivan County.
Okay.
Now, that talks about the principal location, of the station. But if something were to happen, you wouldn't be precluded from having a temporary office someplace else.
Well, we would not, You would be precluded from having, from
You'd be precluded from having, I think, your radio station
principal office.
and actually where you broadcast out of Jeffersonville without amending your
Right, well, we
certificate.
broadcast from Liberty, I think that's where the transmitter is, right?
What's the community of license? I mean, and again, it's been a
Jefferson.
long time since I dealt with this,
City
but
of
it used to
license
be
is
the
Jefferson.
community of license, and then you could have remote studio locations, but your
Yeah.
primary studio had to be in your community of license.
It's still that.
It's
Yeah.
still that? Okay. Yeah.
So on to the meetings part, and I think this is a question for the board also. We put into here, because open meetings was a contentious issue, what is, what isn't, we wanted it to really be clear, and everyone in the working group felt this constant reference to the Federal Communications Act was really helpful. One of the questions that came up, and so what we've really done is we've done the things in here that we felt people would be most likely to look at. What is a meeting? You know, it has to have a quorum, it has to have deliberations, blah, 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 blah. You know, just a group of people, like a work group getting together that have no authority to do something, that's not a meeting, that's a work group. One of the questions that arose, the part of the discussion in the work group was, in the event that the Radio Catskill is no longer taking money from the CPB, does the board want Radio Catskill to be tied absolutely to the federal communications requirement, or do you want to have a parallel open meetings requirement? And you know, I think there are a couple ways to think about this. There is a desire among everyone to make sure that things don't get closed, and there's the one, and I'm not advocating for either side, this is an absolute board decision. The one, I think, possible downside of tying it specifically to the Federal Communications Act, in the event that the corporation no longer receives that funding, is that someone has to keep up with the act all the time. And so the question is, so what we put in here in addition, and right now in a sense this isn't a point because the corporation does receive money and we are subject to it. And if there comes a point that you don't, there may be, you know, what other changes you may want to make. But part of what was felt in here was that we wanted to put in that in addition to the requirements, that it was also the policy of the corporation itself to have an open meetings policy, so that it was more than that we were just tied to a federal act, or the station was just tied to a federal act, but that was the ethos and the philosophy of the station. So,
Any comment on that?
That's
kind of important.
Explanation of closed session. Are we there? Is that a?
Yep.
Okay, WNYC was audited by the CPB this last year, and the CPB found them negligent of not providing that written statement. And so what they're doing now, and this is not what we necessarily have to do, what they're doing is they actually create a separate document and make that publicly available and announce where it is. So what we do is we just put the written statement in our meeting minutes. It may be worthwhile to explain in this little Article 3 here, a written statement containing the reasons for closing the meeting in publicly available board minutes. Just explain where that statement is going to be.
Well, but those board minutes are not approved a month
Once they
later.
are approved.
I think it should be noted sooner.
You can't change that wording. That is
This
the
is-
CPB's
that is
word,
the
yeah,
wording.
yeah.
so what we could add to it, that they will also be available in board minutes, is it necessary?
I don't know if you wouldn't be restricting yourself, because you might decide the board might decide at some later date that that's not the way that they want to publicize this particular issue. Whereas making sure that they're publicly available is the key issue, not
That's
whether or
true.
not they're attached to the minutes.
And so
That's
the
more
way in which
procedural.
the corporation makes it publicly available
So
is,
in other words, if there was a big public uprising and the board wanted to say the next day why they closed the meeting,
They
just,
could say
just
what.
in order to answer questions, et cetera, that could very conceivably happen. And that way you wouldn't have to wait for minutes and approval and that kind of thing.
And I think the way, this is like CPB language, and I think it allows for both ways to go. I don't think it prohibits one over another.
I think it just might be valuable for Joe Public to be able to know where to find that statement.
And do you think that maybe that's a function, because Joe Public is maybe not likely to read the bylaws, but is likely to go on, on the website. So maybe the thing
it
is
on
to
the
deal with
website?
that is to, not necessarily have it in here, but to have it in a very clear spot on the website. I don't know, what do you all think?
I think but on the
Scribble
website,
it
it's
out.
pretty.
But do you want that actually, I mean, I think that that's permitted in here. Does anyone feel additional language is needed, or?
Almost more policy than bylaws.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, into the meetings, we broke them out into all the various types of meetings. And we did provide for emergency meetings, which the CPB allows for. And one of the things that the working group, no, this is on notice later, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. On notice of meetings, a lot of bylaws contain things about waiver of notice, but because the WJFF is subject to the open meetings requirement, we took most of that out because it didn't seem that, notice was such a large part of it. I did put in, and this is for consideration, if it's the emergency meeting that must be held within 48 hours, because we do have notice provisos here, that notice could be waived by a trustee who submits a signed waiver of notice. If it's a meeting within 48 hours, I think that counts as an emergency meeting. And one of the provisions in there for emergency meetings is that it would be broadcast on the air, it would be, all kind of reasonable means would be taken to get the word out.
Lori, and you skipped over under in special meetings, where it said that it,
Oh, you're
it
right.
could be held
The number.
whenever, and it could be asked by the trustee upon written demand of the number of board members.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
So, sorry, I didn't have that
That's okay.
highlighted in mine. So there was some discussion about this also, that there's a provision for special meetings, which if someone feels something is happening, and bylaws vary on this, that the president can always call a special meeting if there's something urgent to discuss. Typically, a number of trustees are also given the authority to say, something is going on, we have to get together and talk. In what I've seen in bylaws, that number, and I know there were questions raised about this, is, considering this is a board of 12, can be quite, a low number. So if it can be 3 trustees together in writing say, we have something we have absolutely got to meet to talk about. So I think the question here is, how many trustees does it take to call a special meeting? And we have in here a trustee upon the written demand of 2 for a total of 3. It could be, I can't imagine it would probably be less than that. It could be a bit more than that.
Again, because our number could vary from 7 to 15, I think we'd be better off saying a quarter of the trustees or something
We could
like
do
that. I mean, we have 12 right now, but that may go up or down within that range of 7 to 15.
Or you could also put in if the trustees are between, are 12 or less, it could be 2 trustees. If they're between 12 or 15, it takes 3 trustees. And that, I think there's a value to having an actual number so that people aren't arguing about, well, it's 33 1/3, and who gets the 33%?
And the number, so it's just, well, you're saying it has to be more than 1 trustee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, always more than 1.
Yeah.
So
Probably more.
2 is the
more than-
minimum number, usually it'll be 3 if, whatever.
So, and it's really what you feel. It's, this is a board that's very communicative. And hopefully that will always be the case. But I think it is good to have a mechanism that if something is going on that a couple of trustees feel is really problematic, that they can pull the board together to deal with it. So.
And if they wanted to do that in writing to the board, and in 48 hours, they would have to have it announced on the air and do whatever they can to make it
Right, because we
known.
put all through this, announcing,
Okay.
notice. The public is so present in these bylaws.
Annual, regular, special, and emergency meetings, unless they're designed to be closed meetings, are all open to the public.
Yes, absolutely.
Only in these four, only one of them says meetings are open to the public.
Right, yeah.
And earlier in the bylaws, I'm sure it says meetings are open to the public, so maybe either all or none of them
That's a great
would
point.
contain that statement.
That's a great point. I mean, we say it here, but you're right, it's not consistent there. Why don't we just add it to every single one? And,
And I mean, is it also worth saying unless the meeting is, to be closed for a reason?
I don't think we have to say that again because
Okay.
that's provided earlier, but I think it's great to repeat that everywhere. I don't think you can say that enough.
Can I just ask a question on this section right here? I find it to be funny to have the general manager as a person who can call.
Oh, that's an
Where's that?
older, that's a.
Oh, that's an older version?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We did it sorry, I know this has had like so many bazillions
You
of
can throw
versions.
them all away now.
And as long as we're on that, the current bylaws makes the station manager a ex officio, I think, member of the board. Is that in, we took that out, right?
That's not in right now. I mean, the
Okay.
board can ask the station manager, the general manager, to come anytime, and, and the general manager could be a member of the board of trustees. An ex officio doesn't mean they don't vote. You have to if you don't want someone to be able to vote, you have to specify that separately from ex officio. But yes, right now, it's not written in that way.
I find that to be a problematic part of the current bylaws, not these.
But these ones say the
It doesn't
operations
have it,
manager
right.
is not
Right.
a member of the board, okay.
Part of the problem, I think, was that so many drafts is that when we got to finalize, final, there was a little bit of confusion. So, but I think we're all on the same point, because Lori is here pointing out the changes, the most recent ones, so.
And we will make sure when these are finally approved, I think there will be a great burning of the drafts.
That's a big fire.
Recycling of the drafts, yes.
Recycling.
Since I
that
know I
chimney.
have a different draft now, this has been resolved, in the election of the volunteers, X days prior?
Yes, you have it, you know what, Barbara, come here, I've got it.
Here.
All right, no, I don't wanna see it.
It actually says on the top, for discussion and vote on,
Okay.
I mean,
I'm going with yours.
Okay.
All right, so, yes, on notice of meetings, we did put in emergency meetings. The corporation will do its best to provide notice to the public by broadcasting the time and place of the meeting on air to begin soon as the time and place have been determined and at frequent intervals throughout. I'm not sure there's alternative meeting formats. The Revitalization Act allowed Skype, which I'm sure people had been using already.
We didn't settle this number question for.
Oh,
special
you're right.
meetings.
Yeah,
So,
we did.
thank you so much. So, are we gonna do 3 up to 12, and if over 12, you need, if you were looking at percentages on the special meetings, number of trustees?
Were we looking at 2 if the number went below,
7, right?
or went
No,
below
that was
10?
2 below 12 and 12 and above 3. That's what I last heard.
2 if below 12, and 3 if
If
above
there were
12?
3 trustees who were very upset about something and felt it warranted discussion, I would want them to be heard no matter what the number.
Exactly.
So I think if we can just set a number, it makes it cleaner. I would hate to think that, we were not going to discuss that because you don't meet a threshold.
I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
So
And I mean,
should we
that's,
keep it as it is, 2
Yeah.
trustees for a total of 3?
Yeah.
So the number becomes 2?
Well, the way we have it is any trustee upon the written, shall be held whenever called, or any trustee upon the written demand of 2. And when we were talking, we found that confusing, because we thought maybe there was one trustee who wants to demand it, and then that trustee goes and gets the support of two others. So the way this is right now, it takes three.
But, and the president can also,
Yes, you
Call a
can, you
meeting
can like
anytime.
unilaterally just say, let's meet.
So that could be in there too, or you can beat up the president.
right.
Yeah.
She will follow.
That's right, or you can like say to the president, if you have two and you go to the president and
You
you
don't
say,
need
we
it."
gotta meet him, then,
Question over here?
I'd just like to make a comment on the insertion of additional open in front of the meetings. I think it would be better to delete the open because you've already made it clear that all meetings that meet the definition of the term meeting need to be open. I think duplicating that could only lead to the situation that somewhere you haven't used that modifier, and therefore it can be challenged that isn't an open meeting.
that's true.
So I think you're better off taking the opens away from the modifying role and leave it in the description of what a meeting
I
must
think
be.
that works. Does anybody have any objection to that?
Excellent
Okay,
point.
that's a really good
Thank you.
point.
I'd like to say one other comment on this meeting section, which is simply that the emergency meetings, in terms of organizational, organizing the meeting, the minutes, the bylaws, it seems like they should go in the notice of meetings section, maybe as 11C, because it refers to reasonable notice, but you don't get to what reasonable notice is until you get to section 11. So it's really, the emergency meeting really has to do more with reasonable.
Why don't I make a reference to the notice section for that?
Mhm. I think that's a good idea.
And so we'll say, and notice will be given to the extent possible as provided for in section 11. Would that take care of that?
Did you go over what a meeting is, that you have to deliberate?
We have that in here, yeah. That's a good point too, because, okay, so that's set. Quorum, majority unless otherwise provided, the vote, majority unless otherwise provided, and we actually listed all of the things here, where 2/3 vote, or, you know what I did not put in here is the sale of license, which requires, well, that comes in its own section. One thing just to note here, the Revitalization Act changes. It used to be that or it still is, that a purchase, sale, mortgage, lease of real property required a 2/3 vote of the corporation. Starting July 1st, it only requires a 2/3 if such an arrangement involves substantially all the assets of the corporation. So the New York law relaxed a little bit on this. You can still require it yourself if you want, but. So, let me see what else we have here. I think these were the only things that, we went through the duties of everyone. This tracks the law. We wanted to make sure in the treasurer's part, it talked about the treasurer's responsibility at the annual meeting to render a report of the corporation's accounts and what that included. And for both directors and officers, we have provided that they're not compensated for their services as such. And I think that takes care of the first 6 articles.
So, other questions or discussions from the public, the board? Now's the time. Before we have a motion to accept these with those changes.
With those
With those
changes,
changes.
Thank you.
Thank you, like all of you.
I'll move.
You move it, okay, so,
Despite
All
the
right,
email
so-
that we got about not making this available to everyone.
I'll read that aloud and learn correspondence.
Thank you.
Is there any other, was there any other public input that came in on this? Wow.
well, there was a post thing that came from one volunteer who really thought the process was very poor.
Right, but that was it, huh?
Yeah. So we have a motion that the first articles of the proposed and amended bylaws, as we work on them tonight, that they replace the corresponding provisions of the current bylaws completely as of now. And Mike has made that motion, and somebody seconded it. Pat, and all in favor? Wonderful. Thank you, thank you. What a milestone! Not that there's more.
To come.
Okay. All right. Now, I just need to clarify the next step on 7 to the end. Your plan is tomorrow to send the board the next set, marked very carefully, and also the points that you should look at.
Right.
This is a
Because
change.
it involves committees, where there's been a lot of discussion about committees. And one of the things also that the Revitalization Act changed was committee structure for nonprofits, that it used to be standing committees and ad hoc committees. That, as of July 1st, is kaput, and now it's committees of the board and committees of the corporation. Committees of the board can only have board members on them, and they're the only committees that can bind the corporation. There is some discussion that you could probably have non-voting members on some of those committees as advisors, but they couldn't vote. Other committees serve more in an advisory capacity to the board, and so when we send these out tomorrow, you'll see how the working group worked to try to categorize both groups.
And, correct me if I'm wrong, but did we not at one point send the whole revised thing and got some comments? Because at an earlier meeting, I think we got to focus on the first 6 because those were the ones that seemed, so I think you may have seen an earlier draft, so it might not seem as much.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
But we did,
Yeah.
after we had the meeting
Right.
that afternoon, I think we made a lot of changes, so I would wait for the next one before you look at it, because, and in the
Right.
next one, we also put in, the other thing that's gonna be the appendix is the conflict of interest policy, which is now also required by the Act, and so we've worked on trying to combine the IRS requirements with New York law requirements, and there are new definitions, and that also covers things like how compensation is determined, but we also felt that it was a good idea to sit that right in there. So that's why these bylaws are long in a way compared to some others, is that we felt there was a real value to having a lot of these procedures, not somewhere else, but right here.
Barbara?
Just if Midge or Lori could just run through what the kind of the timeframe for adoption. We'll get those tomorrow, and then we need comments back to you by when, and when does it go to the public, and
Well, we
so on.
want to be sure we all buy into the schedule. So here's one possible one that we played with, that today is the 19th, and so we ask for your written comments, say, in 10 days or something. Then we put it on the web in an easy-to-find place, and we wait another week, perhaps, for written comments.
This is on 7 to the end, right?
Yes,
Right.
from 7 to the end. But your comments, we were thinking that Lori and I would look through those, maybe with anyone else, to sort of integrate them into the text. We send it back to you. Then it would go, we wouldn't necessarily have a meeting to discuss it. That's one. And then it would go on the web, and people would be asked to comment, and then there would be a Saturday meeting, a board meeting, at which time we would just focus on this, and the purpose would be to adopt the amended minutes completely, bylaws completely.
And then if that's done, we would adopt them, I think there we would really do like a whole resolution, because then we're restating the bylaws. So the existing bylaws are out, the new bylaws come in and take their place.
So the question to you is, do you want us to have, as a board, a kind of back and forth about the different provisions in this second half?
How does that fit in with the work session that you're scheduling?
Nothing has yet been scheduled. My idea is that we really should have a weekend meeting when anybody who is employed can really come. I think that would be a final, if we can figure out a time to do it. Part of me wants to rush this through, but listen, we want to get it really right. We've worked so hard and put such effort in. John, what do you think?
I think we've committed ourselves to at least a 30-day public comment on the, draft language of any policy we're about to adopt, and I would include this as policy, even though it's much larger than that, but,
So would you say
We could-
at our April meeting, we discuss our changes? You send things in and then we actually discuss them and then we post them on the web and have another meeting on a Saturday sometime between mid-April and mid-May?
I didn't quite follow all that.
Well, I think the critical point for me, for the April 16th deadline, was the volunteer election. I think
Right.
we felt we
We've
had to
got
have that
that.
in place. So we have it in
We have
place
that,
now.
yeah.
So if, I was hopeful that we could review and look at this, that's why I think Sonia was planning a Saturday meeting, to maybe make the 16th deadline. But since we have what we need for the volunteer election, I think we could do it in May if you want to, but I mean, I'm not sure,
What
the-
about the Saturday preceding the April?
well, let's take a look at
To
that.
have a discussion with.
To have a meeting or
Because first,
discussion?
like, your concern is to let people come who may not be able to come on a Wednesday,
Oh,
is that?
I very much think it would be better if we could have a weekend meeting for people. I know it's an imposition, but it also could be a meeting, and it could, a meeting, I'm careful using that word, meeting, it could also be a discussion of the bylaws, and if all of us are able to be there to have a quorum, we can just have a meeting with the public, and you could be on hand and some people could be there. It doesn't have to be, an established meeting.
So in terms of the calendar, though, if you're thinking before the 16th, you're thinking maybe the Saturday, the 12th of April? Is that what you're thinking?
That would make sense. Then on that following Wednesday, if
Then
we,
you could go ahead.
we could have that draft language made available and then vote in May.
That makes sense, and that does the timeframe.
And
Right.
does that work for you? Would
Yeah,
you be able to do?
absolutely.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Board comments would be due and would be integrated before that meeting? Is that what we're saying?
I think they'd have to be because we want to try to publish it then.
Okay.
I mean, we want to publish it after.
So we would
Board
have the meeting
comments.
with the public without them really, they would be getting that section at the meeting. They wouldn't have a chance to look at it in advance.
So where are we today? We're like the
We're
19th,
at
so
the
10 days
19th.
is the 29th. So if it went up on like the 1st of April, they would have 12 days up and then time to discuss, is that? Do you think the board could get comments back sooner than 10 days?
We'll get comments at all, actually, but, but that's beside the point. But if we were to have this meeting on the 12th, work all the kinks out of it based on input board has given, then we can make available that kind of, and public invited to input there. All those things can be aggregated, and then on the with the next 15th, is that the next meeting?
April 16th?
16th, then that language could be approved that draft language could be approved for public comment, and then May, whatever, we have the official vote. Does that make sense?
I would just
Yeah.
say, let's, make a version, available to the public at least, a week before
Well, we
the
could
meeting on
send
the
the
12th.
version
Sure.
as
The
it is
version that I'm
now.
gonna send
I
tomorrow,
mean,
we
it's not,
could put up there.
there's
It's
still some
pretty
discussion
final.
points, maybe we should just put it on the web tomorrow, send it to you, put it on the web. Okay,
Okay.
all right, so
All
maybe
And
we
then
should-
can I just ask because somehow May seems a long way away in some ways, that if the version that I send Sonia and she sends to you guys tomorrow with the points, if that goes up, so if that goes up right away, maybe it would even be possible to have a meeting the Saturday before the 12th? I don't know, does that give people enough, except if there's a 30-day? I'm just trying to think if there's a way that everybody would be comfortable actually voting on it at the April meeting.
I think there's
Working on the
Passover and there's
Final.
Eastern Passover
Oh,
holidays
right,
in
right.
there
They're the 21st, 22nd, they're the week after, I think.
the week after.
Yeah, I
20th,
believe
yeah.
It's very late
Passover's
this year.
on the 20th, I
The
think.
12th is the 12th is Palm Sunday, if that, that Palm's up, it's Saturday.
Right.
All right, so we're saying we're gonna send this to you and the list and the web tomorrow, the best that we have.
Yeah.
And we're gonna ask for everyone comments written by okay. And then we have an open meeting or we discuss it at the meeting on the 15th. And then we vote on it on the board meeting on the 5th. Then we are,
But what about, do you want the Saturday meeting still on the
That-
12th?
oh, right.
Yeah, if we were going to do that, I would say move our, if it's possible, move our April meeting to that Saturday. Let's get everything out of the way on one day,
Saturday the 12th?
if that's possible,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's good, because the weekend, schools are closed. You have a double whammy holiday with Passover on the 14th and Easter being on the 20th. So Passover is during Holy Week. A lot of schools are closed, people are on vacation. And we have a lot of seasonal second homeowners that if we had it on a Saturday, they'd like to be here, but not, maybe not during that particular time.
So Saturday meeting the 12th.
Yeah, you may still bump into people that have a problem that they're going away for the holiday, that, you know, the
But they can still
weekends
send
with the week in
us
between, but at
written
least,
comments.
Okay,
yeah.
tomorrow it goes to everyone and on the web. The comments are due the 4th. The 12th, on a Saturday, we have a board meeting, and we do not have it on the
On the 16th.
16th.
And that's gonna be our April meeting.
That will be our April meeting.
That's great.
And our goal on
What
the
time
12th
is it gonna be?
Is to pass the draft resolution. The draft resolution, and then 30 days later, we pass.
What time is it?
I think you could pass the
I'd appreciate
Pass the
having.
bylaws.
Yeah.
I think you could, like, let's just wrap this baby
Then,
up.
is there anything we're forgetting? Does that sound reasonable?
Point of information, John made a comment about there being a 30-day period to review policies. Is that something that the board has voted on, a policy?
We voted on the draft language,
Right.
which was made available for the interim between the last meeting and this meeting. So we have not, it's not policy yet.
Board, so it's not something that, because otherwise you wouldn't be meeting that.
No,
Right, okay.
But it says the language specifically said that when we vote on something and we approve it, it has a 30-day period of time, after we've approved it, before it becomes final. Wasn't that my interpretation of this law, that the policy that we had? Wasn't it that whatever we decide to do, it goes out there for 30 days afterwards, like an airing time?
But I don't.
Yeah, it's probably on my computer too. Oh, no.
The issue, I think, of 30 days came up, and it's not required by law. We may have wanted to do it for
Right.
our own reasoning, but it's not a legal requirement, so if it was, so we could do it in 3 weeks if we wanted to. We could probably do it in 3 days if we wanted to. Not. But I think we were just trying to be overly cautious with the 30 days. I don't think we need the 30 days.
Well, I think if we just approved the policy saying 30 days, we ought to abide by it.
Well, what if we came to an agreement about it at the 12th, and then we actually do the final voting at the May meeting? We could have, can you kind of poll the trustee?
I think you better think about that 30 days, to tell you the truth,
I think so, too.
because what you just did tonight, if it was, 2 months hence and you had the policy, you couldn't say what you said and say, have these bylaws replace the ones, you couldn't do that. So you're getting into a pretty limiting situation.
There's another provision, though. There's a provision in the current bylaws that for amending, which says the trustees have to have notification of the amendments. Let me double check, but I think it says at least 8, but not more than 30. So I think if, I'm not trying to push any envelopes, but bylaws aren't policy, if that's what the.
I was about to ask
Yeah.
that question.
Bylaws aren't
Thank you.
policy.
So,
Good, okey-doke.
Yeah.
I mean, what it
As long
says.
as that's
Let's move.
not the spirit of what we were trying to do.
No, I understand, but if, but I think you also have to be careful here, because what we're still bound by in amending is bylaws may be amended or repealed by majority vote of trustees. Any regular or special meeting, provided notice of the proposed amendment, including the text thereof, shall have been emailed to each trustee at least 8 days and not more than 30 days in advance of such meeting. So they're sort of butting up against each other a little bit.
So our regular meeting would have been April
16th, it's a difference of 4 days.
Right, but because of the holidays, in that last month we had a meeting that we postponed for another week. So we could make this meeting on Saturday, the 26th, which gives us the full 30 days
That's true.
and gives us plenty of time to accept comment. We're not bumping into any holidays, and we can have our meeting, but it
And
gives
at
us,
least it saves it so it doesn't go all the way to May.
yeah.
I mean, I agree with you, the spirit's important.
I think so too, and I think if, we're defending ourselves about the openness and the transparency from people who don't come and just complain, and it's like, but so let's not, we said 30 days, and I think that that's important, so having it on the 26th is not a terrible thing,
26
because we bumped into some holidays here.
So here's the plan. Tomorrow it goes to everybody. Written comments are due by the 4th. And on the 26th, Saturday, there will be a special board, we're changing the date of the April board meeting.
Right.
And it will include this as well. And we will find, what time is it gonna be?
I'd appreciate an early start.
I would too.
What's early, like 11 or?
Nine.
Nine?
9:30?
No,
I like
I go
really.
at 6, but,
I'll be driving up
You
there that
finish your
day.
Yeah,
show,
okay.
and you
So
do your
where-
show
where
at
are they
6, don't
coming from?
yours?
So what's good
Can
for you?
I just ask the board also, I've got a draft conflicts policy. This is going to be Appendix A to the bylaws. This has to be in place June 1st. Especially since it's the 26th, if I get this to you within the next few days, do you think that there's room to do this at the same time? Okay.
Do we have to have a motion? This is just our plan of our
It's a
meetings. Do we
plan.
need, okay. All right. And I will send a little reminder about this when we send out the thing tomorrow, and then it'll be posted on the web tomorrow.
But do we need a motion to change the next meeting?
Oh, yeah, we probably do. Someone vote to change the April meeting. Pardon? Yeah, okay,
All right.
moving on.
So, but it's 9:30 at the 26th, and we'll determine
We're
where.
negotiating 10 o'clock.
Could we do 10, because I'll be driving
Yeah.
up from New Jersey that day?
Oh, like
I'll come up the night before.
Paper. My
And we'll
printer,
determine
the
the
cartridge
location?
went out. I didn't have.
We'll determine the location, right?
Yeah, I have to find a location. We should have food. We'll think about it. Somebody have the agenda.
I have an agenda. And I'm going to scoot something.
Let's have lunch.
On a Saturday, that's
We're done by noon. Should be an incentive.
Okay. There you go. All right. General Manager's report. Adam, you're on.
Are we done?
Were you gonna have public comment after this?
We've been having public comment along the way on this, but more public comment about this bylaws thing. There's another section for public comment later in the meeting too.
I'm
Anything
gonna
else? We're very glad to have the public here. Thank you.
I sent the general manager's report to all of you earlier today. And in the interest of sort of saving time, I'm just gonna have John put it up on the screen. You all can read it, and if anybody has questions, please fire away.
Yeah, I have a question. This morning, Jim Huntington, he made an on-air apology for his on-air endorsement of Jeb Bush for president in 2016, okay? Endorsement of candidates and issues, that's a serious thing in our bylaws, and the violations are serious business,
Yep,
okay?
it's not in our bylaws, it's in our policy, man.
Well, what concerns me is that 2 weeks before he made the endorsement of Jeb Bush, he advocated that the President Obama stop his efforts to raise the minimum wage, and he also advocated that President Obama okay the construction of the Keystone Pipeline. Didn't those violate our policy? That violates our policy too.
It may have, I didn't go and listen to them specifically, but he's
You didn't
basically,
listen to the program?
not that one specifically.
After I sent you emails telling you about it? You didn't answer that? You didn't listen to the program?
I spoke to the host.
You didn't listen to the program, though?
No.
You didn't hear him say that the President Obama should not try to increase the minimum wage? And then just the next sentence, he said, the president should okay the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. To me, that sounds pretty political.
That is pretty political.
Yeah, and that's, you know, go to the archives, you'll see it right there.
I think my understanding is it's acceptable for him to express his opinion on the air,
Yeah,
but that it's not acceptable for him to, what's the word? To endorse a candidate or to advocate political action. So I think it would be certainly improper for him to say, folks should go and vote in favor of this or of that, but for him to say, I think President Obama should or should not do this, seems to be his prerogative.
I don't think so.
John, you wanna pull up the policy? You had it there.
It says that all on-air volunteers must not advocate political action.
Right, so not
Isn't
say-
that what he's advocating? He's telling the president to
I
stop,
think advocating political
and
action
then,
is
and that tells him
encouraging-
to okay the Keystone Pipeline? That is advocating political action. Or recommend, or endorse candidates or issues, or urge specific political involvement.
That
I think
seems-
he violated the rules right there.
Can I? Yeah, I think if he had said you should go and vote if indeed that were possible, you should vote in favor of the Keystone Pipeline, that's political action. For him to express an opinion that President Obama should do something, that's not political action, that's expressing an opinion, just as a liberal commentator might advocate an action that said he should block the Keystone Pipeline. I think we're getting into I absolutely agree with you 100% on the endorsement of Jeb Bush. That was absolutely, that's a no-go. I don't think we want to get in the business of shutting down opinion that we don't individually like. And I think he has a right to express it, and then what we hope happens is that someone expresses the alternative, and that those two competing points of view are out there for our listeners to make their own choices from. So I agree with you halfway. I agree with you 100% on the endorsement of Jeb Bush. I wish the Bushes and the Clintons would go away and leave us alone. But I
Shouldn't say that on the air, however.
yeah, no, I can't say it on here, I can say it here. But I think that in,
now.
Well, maybe.
well, I got it. But I think in terms of, we get into really murky waters when we start parsing opinion, which I think that's the other two comments were. I think that you would probably find people saying that on some NPR broadcasts. And we wouldn't think
Yeah.
twice about it.
Yeah, the nature of his show,
Are we doing a disclaimer on this program?
Yeah, at the beginning, at the end.
well, he's starting to do one, yeah.
He did send us an apology for
Send
misstepping.
it to you and Julia, I think.
I think it went to the board.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Okay, and how has he taken this critique of his behavior?
He's.
Does he get it?
Yeah, well, he's signed, he's received a written citation, essentially, for breaking station policy, and he's signed that and returned it to me, and it's gone in his file.
I had two points, but to come back to Mike's point, I don't know, maybe it's a matter of nuance or my opinion, but when someone says, I think President Obama should, I think that's advocating policy. So that's where I think it is an endorsement. It's an endorsement of policy. I mean,
But is policy the same thing as
well,
political
because
action?
I think it's different if I said, I think President Obama should yada yada, than if I said, I think, we oughta yada yada. I don't know. I mean, so.
I think he said issue permits to okay the construction of the Keystone Pipeline. So he said issue permits, that's a specific action.
Oh, issue permits,
I think that's what he said, I can't remember exactly his wording. But it's almost irrelevant. The whole thrust of the show has been very political opinionated, and that's not the place for this kind of discussion. If we're
That's
gonna
for
have a
democracy now.
yeah, if we're gonna have, yeah, the idea.
Is Amy even moderate?
What is
You know,
the
the-
purpose of the program?
The idea of work shift was in my mind, about local people finding local jobs. In other words, like, they should focus on stuff like, what kind of career training can I get over at the college? What kind of jobs are going to be available with the new casinos? How can I train myself for a job in this area? And this has shifted into a whole political discussion about national politics, and it's not appropriate.
Well, no, I'm just wondering if that's something that it should be addressed with the committee that accepted the proposal, because if he's deviated from what he originally proposed, work shift to talk about the employment and work and the labor force, and now he's gone into, I think that's something that we're,
Yeah,
it
I think
should be,
that's a substantial issue.
But that's not an issue for us.
But the other issue too is,
Well,
there,
Our
we're
station's
well
not
known
their
for
issue.
programs like
Yeah.
Point Counterpoint, where,
Those aren't
people.
locally produced programs.
Really? Thanks for telling me that.
Sorry.
Where we encourage discourse on some of our
Yeah.
programs. I've listened to Dick's program when he is talking with people, and there's discourse, free and open discourse. Not everybody agrees on anything, and are we gonna only have, I object to us thinking that we can only have one kind of program on this radio station,
Right.
that we won't allow free and open discourse of other viewpoints on our radio station.
but I would have to see what the original proposal was
Yeah.
of what work shift is designed to produce, the kind of show. I don't know what he proposed that he would be doing, and
Political
if-
discourse is different
from-
than a
I-
political rant.
You haven't heard Grant.
Right. No, I think I get Pat's, point, and other people have said it, that we want different opinions, and I think that's fine and that's fair. My issue was a couple of shows earlier when he actually did not tell the truth about facts. He started quoting economic statistics, and in fact, you can find all kinds of policy, to support your statistics. It was Harry Truman that said, there's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. So I know all of that, but I think when there are specifics that have evidence to them, factual evidence, he crossed the line a month or so ago.
can you be specific, because I didn't hear it,
Okay,
I'm just
when he was
curious.
talking about
I'm sorry, Mitch.
there were several statements, but the one that just popped into my head was, he said, in fact, most people earning minimum wage are teenagers.
And they live
That
at
is
home.
false, and they live at home, and that is false. In fact, there are something like 30. He said that today? Oh, he repeated that today? Today I missed it because I was doing an appointment, but I'll catch it on the archives. But my point is, that is a false statement. That is a false statement. In fact, there's all kinds of economics and that have shown that right now, today, at least in the last decade, probably longer, it's something like, the mean age is something like 34.
I'd like to make
And-
a motion that we table this
Okay,
discussion. This
all right.
programming matters, I'm not sure that we need to be involved in. The policy issues have been addressed by our general manager, and unless we've got something
I think Adam has this
that
under
needs to be
control.
added.
He's talked with the person as, according to the regs. He's written it up on a file. He's had him sign that. He's put the disclaimer in, and the host has apologized for what he's doing. And maybe just a little attention to listening to his shows would be the next step for now. If we could move on?
Okay.
Okay?
Is there anything else that's actually on the station manager's report that anybody would like to discuss?
I would like,
Go right ahead.
no, I would like you to.
Are you gonna read it? Or no?
So what did the county say? Would they give you a definite?
No, nothing yet.
Nothing yet.
Basically, they just said we want to meet with you to discuss it and then come next week or two. I don't know, ask me if I'm expecting good news.
Are you expecting good news?
Probably not, just seems like the hits keep on coming.
I think on this question, I would like us to consider a letter from the board, not to the person in that department, but to the legislature. And when you send something to the legislature, they parcel it out on which person gets it. Because we have been in this limbo for like 18 months. And we could be likely to be in this limbo for a longer time. The county's putting on a lot of other towers. I think it would, and also we have many friends in the legislature. And we could each call those people that we know one-on-one. We know,
Write a letter to each individual
we could, yeah.
legislator.
So if we could say, Adam, if we don't hear anything by the next meeting, then maybe some more direct action. Individual letters from, as constituents,
Yes.
from each of us, you know. I write to my person, Cindy Geiger, you write to Kitty Vetter, and then something else. Okay.
John, is there more to this?
Yeah, scroll down, there's another whole line, I
Are you gonna cancel the fund drive again this year?
think. I was
Adam?
thinking about that this morning.
I mean, it worked out all right last year.
Yeah.
How did that light bulb replacement go?
Oh, man, boy,
Mhm.
I just put that on, it's nice when it's something small.
Yeah.
Nice when it's.
So the transmitter off air the other day was nothing to do with the electric service,
No.
it was just the
A
parts.
known glitch with those transmitters, just a simple, literally a 60-cent part. It's called a thermistor. Goes bad, needs to be replaced, and when it goes bad, the transmitter thinks it's overheating and shuts down.
So I just wanted to let you know that, I think the replacement of that transmitter resulted in an extension of our broadcast's quality sound, because I picked up the station on 84 at a longer distance while I was going to work. So, just saying.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's all.
He said, just saying.
Just
Maybe, Adam, on the pledge drive, we really are wanting, expecting, and needing all of you to be at the station for some of these events.
agree with that sign-up sheet.
Yes.
The sign-up sheet is right over here,
Yeah.
so if anyone hasn't had it yet, please.
And there is a very special, different end to the drive that we've never tried before.
Yeah.
And a musical gala event that should be really very festive.
So on your CPV thing, are you gonna send that letter?
Yeah, me and Sonia are gonna finalize a letter and send it out in the next week or so.
Kevin, you should talk about that, because it's not just a musical.
We're gonna talk about that in the correspondence, and we will do that. The other thing with the pledge drive, Adam and I and the executive committee talked about how we have been phrasing things related to the pledge drive. And we've, in the recent history of pledge drives, we've talked a lot about our donors as those people who give money, and we've had always goals that were money goals. And this time we're gonna try to focus on members, because I would like to be able to show at the end of this year, and Pat and Barbara Demarest has a lot of these figures, is our membership growing over time? And what do we know about those people? So we're gonna try this time, and the staff has agreed to work on that. We're gonna be sure to get the residents of people who contribute, not that they live in New York City, and, yeah.
And we're gonna call it a membership drive, not a pledge drive.
Yes, it's members.
That we didn't really talk about, actually. We didn't talk about calling it a membership drive versus a pledge drive. We haven't talked about reaching a certain number of members goal versus a dollar figure goal. It kind of informally got discussed, but we never really reached a solid agreement on that, I don't think.
Oh, I would like us to agree to that. I mean, I think we cannot keep talking about donors. We somehow has to focus on the individuals who support this station.
My
Mike?
wife's been doing a lot of work on that because she's working with a lot of nonprofits, and what she's been coming up with over and over and over again is you gotta stop talking about yourself, you gotta start talking about that the donor or member is the hero. It's not the organization. And that the members' stories are the stories that you have to tell, not the story of the organization. People already know that to the large part. What you've got to do is say, and instead of we did this wonderful thing, it was this donation or this money that so-and-so gave made it possible for this wonderful thing to take place. So what you do is you make the member, the donor, whatever we call them, are the hero. They know what we do. It's making those people important. And that's the whole new mantra in fundraising is donor is hero.
Donor-centric.
Yeah.
Are we agreed on that, Adam? That's a little twist.
Members. Different organizations are gonna call it different things, but yeah. That it's centric to the person or persons, the community that is making it possible to do what you do. What you do is not necessarily where you wanna go. That it's how those people make it possible.
Might be interesting to have some comments by members about why they gave.
They're doing that now on, and they're doing that now on the AMC. very effectively, because that's my
They're
other
doing their
station.
research too.
Did we
I
use
listened.
those?
What do they do?
So they have, yesterday and the day before, they had, a guy who has a business up in Albany area, and he gets on and said he's been a member and a listener of WMC for a long time, and, really appreciates, the work that they do, blah, 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 blah. And he has like a minute on there saying,
Is that recorded or is that?
it's recorded, and he identifies himself. And so that we have like somebody from one of our underwriters, I don't know.
We've been doing that for 4 years and we're continuing to do
Okay.
it. We've got them all in the can already for starting tomorrow.
Okay.
We've got, we keep adding to
We keep
our
adding to
repertoire
that,
of those.
yeah.
We've got, 40 of them by now.
I don't remember AMC doing that before, I just noticed that now.
Be listening to us.
Huh?
They must be listening to
stole it
us.
from
Maybe
Adam.
they're listening
Yeah.
to us, there you go.
We're still on pledge drive for a second here?
Yeah.
Because, did Kevin speak about, the end of the pledge drive? Does everybody know about that?
Yes, but I think
I
we're gonna
think-
talk about that in comments.
Okay,
Yeah,
comments,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, so this is a bit different. Do we need to have a motion about this, or is this our understanding, the board? Yeah, this is, we're gonna focus on the members. Okay. Okay, anything else?
Well, and the voice box thing, I saw you, put out something about that today. And did you get any hits on it?
Not yet, but only 20% of respondents have opened that email so far.
Okay.
So as more people do, hopefully.
email from people, feedback.
Feedback, yeah, we're getting feedback from all sorts of different channels. We've got a good pile already, so we could kind of pick from that to get started. And hopefully, as people hear feedback on the air regularly, they will be more inclined to submit feedback.
And why wouldn't you, in your capacity, be the voice box person?
It's one less, I've got enough going on. I
I
can,
know you do.
pretty easy to pass this off to somebody else to produce
Okay,
and gather the information and.
okay.
Okay, we can move on. Andrea?
Mm-hmm.
This is split in half volunteer, half member. Just a couple of things to share. April 6th through 12th is National Volunteer Week, so we'll use that to celebrate our volunteers. We currently have 3 trainees for board operating, Marshall, Gowan, and Ron. I just thought I'd put a plug out for Farm and Country. John is desperate in need of help to provide, particularly in editing, so if you or you know somebody, that would be helpful. We sent out almost 90 volunteer agreements to ask people to update their contact information and agree to follow existing policy. So we just have a handful out. I need signatures from 2 people here. And okay, then the pledge drive. The sign up is going around. I know some of you saw it already. The shaded gray areas are the highest places of need. We can survive with 1 person in the white areas, but the gray areas we need at least 2 or 3. So as you sign up, if you can focus on those areas, that would be helpful. If you can't come and you just want to send food, that would be helpful too. And then the member report, I just focused on the Sound Supporter program, particularly for the pledge drive tomorrow, so we really pushed it last drive. I don't have the numbers from before the last drive. John might have them on his head, but
12.
so we had there's 2 types. Some are registered online, that's automatically done, from the website enrollment, and then some we do manually just from people giving us their information. So we have 65 people enrolled in monthly installments from anywhere from $5 to $30 a month, and that totals $12,000, $272 a year. So we're hoping to push that starting tomorrow to up that.
$50,000.
That'd be nice, like you said, one less fund drive, if we could.
And we will be encouraging current sound supporters to
Up the ante,
up
huh?
their monthly.
Make a one-time additional pledge or up their monthly contribution.
Okay.
That's it for now.
Okay. The Community Advisory Board, Tara.
That's me.
That's you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daryl. John, I'm sorry. Yeah, what's that? Yes, I'm here from the Community Advisory Board, and John, I'm sorry I didn't email this to you. I didn't know I was supposed to. I'll hand it over to you. We have a few members who have resigned from the Community Advisory Board for personal reasons. Modou Diouf, was very sad to see him go. He was a lovely guy. His class schedule has gotten heavy, and he's just not able to take on the meeting. And Doug Bell, he is pursuing other things, including he wants to put together a show for the station. I don't know if he's presented that to anyone yet, but that's what he's working on. And then Henry Beerling was removed from the board for missing 3 consecutive meetings without notice or cause. And that's just a policy that we had voted on early on. I sent him a thank you note for the time that he was able to spend and let him know, and so he should be okay. So we're now left with 11 members, which is still pretty hefty. We did attempt a February meeting, and for the first time since September when we started meeting, we did not have a quorum. And several members were on holiday, and a few others were out for personal reasons. And these other 2 people weren't quite voted out yet, so anyway, we weren't left with a quorum that meeting, although we did have a nice meeting, and a few members from the Board of Trustees were there. And we talked about the CPB rules as they apply to the Community Advisory Board. We spoke about the work group that's been formed by the board to work on a charter for the Community Advisory Board, which is very, very important after the experience I've had over the last few months of working with people in a situation where we're sort of thrown into a room with very little understanding of what it is that we're supposed to be doing or how we're supposed to go about that. Let's see. One of the things that we're going to be discussing in our April meeting will be the charter. So if there's anybody from the Board of Trustees that's able to make it to that meeting, you know, we will hopefully come up with some suggestions to contribute. I'm sorry? April the 7th. It's a Monday at 6:30, and we meet at the Jeffersonville Village Hall on the top floor. Also on that April meeting, we're officially, I believe that this particular board term ends at the end of May. And I'll be reaching out to the board members. We should have a full house that day because everybody's back from holidays and vacations. I'll be reaching out to the board members that might be interested in continuing on the board, and I'll submit names to the Board of Trustees at the next meeting. And also at that time, you know, if the board feels it's necessary that we're not all of a sudden caught without a CAB, we may want to consider staggering terms since we're all sort of ending at the same time at the end of May.
Are there some things in the bylaws, Midge, with the proposed CAB language about terms and for CAB members and staggering terms? And
Yes, there's staggered terms for everything, for all the
so
committees.
that's and I believe it's, unless, I don't know if this changed in the bylaws, but the CAB started their annual cycle sort of a month after the board's annual meeting, which would mean it would go July through June. So I think you have another month, I guess,
Oh.
unless that's changed. Or is it still, the CAB starts their terms or gets voted in at the meeting after?
It was just because of the chaos they got started a month later, if that was by design.
That
I
was the
honestly.
bylaws.
Because we had to appoint them, so we had to.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
Didn't we on the bylaws working group say that we wanted the CAB, and maybe that's what this charter is, to come up with this set of parameters yourselves? Didn't,
I thought we did.
so is that what your charter is?
Well, I think that if that's the Board of, what, after a long few months of working things
Yeah.
out and talking about these things, if it's the Board of Trustees, but I think it has to come from the Board of Trustees as a directive, because otherwise our particular group has a hard time agreeing.
Well, and Sonia, I thought Sonia, right at your house that day, didn't we send an email or to somebody, or I don't know if it got sent, asking the Community Advisory Board to sort of go through a bylaws process, but not bylaws,
Well, I don't know if I'm interrupting your report, but wasn't there a work group of trustees who?
Yeah.
The work group was formed and we met and we discussed a lot of this and we want to go to the meeting on the 7th. We wanted to outline some direction, to explain from the Board of Trustees viewpoint and the new bylaws viewpoint, the structure of the CAB and the relationship with the Board of Trustees. We also have a project that we'd like to give you to do on identifying the demographics of our listening area, based on the map of our designated listening area that Adam, I think, provided to you. And then I have a lot of demographic data that I'll give you from the work that I do every day. So I have Sullivan County demographics and age demographics and work demographics, and so that we're going to ask the board, a community advisory board, to advise us about the community that we broadcast to, and give a task of reporting back to us by June with a report back about the breakdown of the demographics and are we reaching groups? Are there gaps in the groups that we are not reaching? Are there things that we could do better to reach the people in our designated listening area? That work group is Steve Harris, who's been the liaison to the CAB. But with Steve moving, we're going to have to appoint a new liaison to the CAB. Midge Maroney and I and Martin Springatti were on that work group. We talked a lot about some of the communication issues too, and better communication between the Board of Trustees and the CAB. So we all decided we were going to go to this meeting, which we're going to try to go as a group, and make a presentation and discuss issues with them.
And I'd just like to add that the meeting was abbreviated because Steve had to leave, and so we didn't get to talk about all the possibilities for activities that we thought may be appropriate for the CAB.
Could I just raise one question? And I don't know whether the meeting on April 7th is the proper time to discuss that, or if the work group of trustees needs to talk about it. But we'll be into community outreach season pretty soon, and I'm not sure whether it's appropriate to ask the CAB, either as individuals or as a CAB, to participate in helping us staff those events. I'd just like direction on, whether that's an appropriate activity for the CAB, either as a board or as individuals who, do it on their own time.
Same goes with the pledge drive.
And when it came up and we were talking about it, Pat, I thought, didn't we mention that we wanted them to use your data too? But I just don't know.
I'm talking about,
I know,
going off to
yeah.
the Liberty.
Gathering her
Parade,
data.
We didn't talk about that.
No.
Or the, Roots
Right.
and Rhythm, event, or the tractor parade, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, we can give them tasks. What do people think about that? I mean, talk about it.
We could also have them, we could give them the task of operating, 1 or 2 musical events a year, a fundraiser.
Well, I think we are missing this look at where our station touches the different communities of the listening area. Nobody's doing that. We haven't had the labor power to do that.
I'm not really asking, for this to be decided right here, right now.
Right.
Just, that's, I'm gonna need some direction on that come May.
Well, I mean, in the present bylaws, when it's defined that they're encouraged to seek out the views of the community at large, which they could easily do at tabling events throughout. If they're, we could put that out there as part of the activities that they might want to participate in, that we need assistance with, which would, forward to the betterment of the station. So, I think we decided we were going to meet another time before the April 7th meeting. The work group, we were going to reach out to some other people for some assistance in doing a presentation to the CAB so that it was something that we, agreed on, and we could run it by you, put together even a PowerPoint so that you could see the presentation that we would present to them, and see if we can make the communication better between us and you.
How does that, what do you think of that?
I think that sounds great, yeah, absolutely. And I think I can safely speak for the board that I think everyone in the Community Advisory Board would like to be included in events. A lot of them that's their background from working with the station, is participating at tables or pledge drives, and they very much want to be considered as that. But we will respect, whatever the board decides.
Daryl, with the resignation of Modu, do you have someone in the younger group now in the community? 'Cause it seems like he was your youngest one.
By far. And I don't know how many of you got to know Modu, but he was a very sweet guy. It's too bad that maybe this next time around I might reach out to him again and see what his schedule's like, because he was it was great to have around, and he was really useful and always had something great to say.
Well, don't
But no,
forget he's
we-
the college, and he was from the college.
He
Maybe
was-
he has some people to recommend you.
I'll touch base with him.
I was at the college today I hadn't been there in a long time. We really have a wonderful college. I mean, I went in the library and there were so many people there, young people, and I thought, we haven't done events at the college in a long time. It's a great place. I don't mean to butter you up or anything, but,
Nobody did events at the college in a long time.
we have a college. I mean, we really have a college, and I was really impressed. I wonder if he couldn't suggest someone who might, a younger person, or maybe you, Mike, or whoever is working at the college might know someone who could, I think the college is something we haven't looked at. Yeah, Adam.
Does the board need to accept the resignations that Daryl's listed? Make that, do they need to vote on that? Do you need to make that official?
I don't think so.
I mean, we accepted
We approved
them.
them, but I don't think we need to,
Okay.
But it's very nice you do the thank yous. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if this seems okay with you, then may we move on? Or any other questions about?
Thrilled with the group that's working on the charter. I think that you can use a lot of the bylaws as a basis for the CAB. I think they'll be very useful in that way. And if you need any help on any specific part of it, or if you just want input in any way, just reach out to us and we will definitely do our best.
We talked about sending out some comments, or at least an agenda about what we were gonna talk about to you and the CAB members before the meeting, so everybody knew, got a little heads up that we were coming and this is what we wanted to talk about.
That would
Yep.
be great.
Okay?
Yeah, if you send it to me, I
I
can
will.
distribute it to the group.
Okay.
So,
I have a little question about when you say that we should come up with a charter for the CAB. That sounds a little not right to me, because the CAB has all kinds of rules and regulations already by the CPB, and
actually, very little. It's very vague in the CPD, the writings of it.
so you're telling us that you want us to make rules for the CAB?
I'm very much telling you, and begging you for rules, because operating without any sort of guidance or rules can be mayhem in the wrong hands.
Well, so how have you
Maybe
been
that's me.
conducting meetings so far?
Well, we've been able to have meetings, we've been able to take minutes, we've been able to have lively discussions, but we haven't gotten anything done.
And I've read the minutes, and they're really interesting to read. They're more interesting than my minutes by far. But there has been a lot of discussion about these things. What you are to do and how you're to organize yourselves, and it's quite interesting.
If it were
But
up to the board to say, you know what, if it were you guys say, you go write your rules and regulations, then we would do it. But after a discussion with Mr. Smithers of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I got on the phone with him. He was basically like, the Board of Trustees is your governing body. They're the ones that are supposed to be setting up your guidelines and rules and whatever. So that's the only reason I'm saying to you, yes, we want your help.
Are we hung up on verbiage here? do you really want rules and regulations, or do you want direction, focus, and guidance? I would feel really uncomfortable telling the community what they were supposed to think. I would have no problem at all saying, we really need help in determining, are we servicing the segments of the community that we want? And is that a difference? Am I misunderstanding? Because I don't think we want to give you rules and regulations.
Well, just guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, it sounds like that's
That's what we were,
Yeah.
that's what we, there was one topic that came up in our conversation, that we were concerned about. And was a comment that was made, that you received hate mail from people on your board. And we, were concerned about that because we felt that perhaps, we haven't seen that mail. So it's been, we're not privy to that, but we also felt in our conversations that if the level of the discourse in that mail was such that we might want to ask the person who sent it to resign from the board, or not to resign, but tell that person they're no longer on the board, that we choose not to reappoint them. But you're the one that got it, and you haven't shared it, but it was mentioned. It was mentioned the amount, and it was mentioned that it was hate email. And we wanted to take that one step further and see if perhaps that was inappropriate behavior from a board member on the CAB toward the chairman.
Daryl, you said there was like 75 emails?
Yeah, over one topic, which is, are we considered volunteers?
Now,
And why were we not invited to this dinner? Yeah, which I was like, I don't have to go to the dinner, but, other people were like, why weren't we invited to the dinner?
75 emails coming from one person?
No, it was a few people, like 2 or 3.
But you only have 11 members, so.
Yeah, and 75% of those don't really write emails, so it was just a few people. I don't know how to call it hate email, but I think there's a level of excitement that gets, like, I just can't, they wanted an emergency meeting, and I just don't know what is an emergency for a community advisory board. I mean, we really don't have a lot of teeth, and, it's yes, it's an important question, and yes, we should present it to the Board of Trustees, and yes, we want to be considered volunteers and all these things. That's all solid and good, but I think that there was a level of sort of, excitement that I wasn't allowing to happen, and people were being frustrated by that. And I just didn't think it was necessary to call emergency meetings and start harassing the board about our volunteer status. I think it was more appropriate just to put that out there to you and say, you know what, are we considered volunteers, and if not, why? And if so, great, and if not, fine, but, so it just frustrated. I know that there was one of the CAB members here last week, and I think she talked to you guys a little bit about it.
Yes.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, she expressed a lot of frustration.
yeah, she's not happy with the way things went down. And a lot of it is background, she's still, she has a lot of feelings about the way things went down from earlier troubles that I think that maybe she still needs to work out, but I don't know, I'm not a therapist.
All right, so we'll be in touch with you, and we are working on this. We want to make it better.
Yes, thank you, I do too.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you for sticking in with this. So we'll move on to,
Yeah. A member of the public.
Yeah.
Just because it's related to this, and it's not to the issues that you've been discussing, but one of the tasks that it occurs to me it might be a good thing for the CAB to look into is the FCC quarterly issues that the station reports on every quarter. And during the FCC reauthorization process, when we were reviewing those records, I noticed that we have not changed the priorities for some time. And in the past, the Community Advisory Board was key in looking over those priorities of public issues. And it is the truth, I think, that the public affairs that we cover, it should be dynamic. It shouldn't be something that goes, the priorities don't remain the same year after year after year after year. to take a look at it to determine, for instance, you know, if there is an issue that is a pressing concern in our community now.
Could you, Andrea, do you submit those? Could you summarize those in a note and send to the board, like what? Yeah.
Do you want me to send it to the board or the CAB committee? Okay.
Like the summary of what, yeah, it would tell the things we've identified as priorities and how we do them.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Pat, did we have to pick a date on that?
No,
Okay.
we're waiting for Steve.
Okay.
Okay, we're up.
They do it without Steve.
Moving on, Pat, your treasurer.
Treasurer's report is done. I sent you the, should be quick. Profit and loss and the balance sheets are prepared by Barbara Donatelli, and I sent them out to you. I picked up the paperwork from the village of Jeffersonville for the zoning change. I filled out the form. I'm gonna give it to Sonia to sign. I need to attach a map. There was some maps that I had. I'm looking for a specific map. So somebody here has it because I used it when we did the grant. So I have two maps. One is a George Fulton survey map of the whole campus, which includes Greft property, includes the greenhouse property, although the greenhouse is not indicated on this map, and it includes Larson property and includes where the station is. So if somebody has this, does anybody have this in a cleaner format? I guess I could clean this up a little bit, but I wanna know if there's an original hanging around somewhere. Who owns this?
I might be
You
able to
might.
track that down.
Okay. And then the other
I have
map
copies of it. but
that
not
I
before.
have is the greenhouse map, but it was marked up by Martin
Yeah.
when he was showing where the views were from the house,
Right.
which is nice.
We
and
have
different
plenty
things.
of copies of
But
that, yeah.
do we have an unmarked
yeah,
up
yeah,
plain
yeah.
copy of that one too? All right, so I need copies of that. Question that was asked from Dave Bodenstein for that I should attach to this for the planning board was parking. They usually ask a lot about parking. So I measured in my unofficial way, but I'm sure that people who have more institutional knowledge than I could give me a better number, that we had parking, long lot, along the driveway that goes down to the station. I thought we could do 5 cars head in there. I thought 4 in the upper lot, around the big green monster.
It wasn't there.
And 2 below the station, so I'm coming up with, I think I got 10 down below, plus there's 2 next to the house, and then we could put some on the road. So I added in, I'm gonna attach to the application, he wants attached to the application a statement of if we're having a meeting there, we can accommodate X amount of cars, and show them where we could accommodate X amount of cars. We don't have to be specific with the work that we want to do in the future. For this purpose, we're asking them for a special use permit to change our zoning from residential to allow us to use it for commercial uses. And that's what he's suggested, the route that we go.
Who makes that decision?
He calls a special meeting of the Village of Jeffersonville Planning Board. I don't know who's on the Village of Jeffersonville Planning Board, but I spoke with David Bodenstein, who's the chairman of the planning board for the village. So he calls a special meeting. They only meet when there's an issue. They don't meet regularly. So we'll submit this paperwork back to the village clerk, Colleen. She'll give it to David Bodenstein. He'll get his group together and call a meeting. We'll be notified. And we can go. If they have any questions, we can answer them. The application simply says they were asking for a change of use, that we're asking for they want to know the existing usage, and I put down that the building has been used by WJFF Radio for the past 5 years. Records show that we began paying the taxes on this property in 2009. And we've used it for meetings, and we've used it for storage. And then they want to describe the proposed usage. We would like to expand our usage, improve access, and perhaps build a new broadcast studio. I put that in there. No, we're not tied to that, but I wanted to leave that open to know that we could use it for the purpose that we do. That's our business, broadcasting radio. And the current zoning is residential. We would like a special use or a zoning change. Okay?
Is the parking do you think we're gonna have an issue with that, or because,
He
you know?
said that they ask on everything about available parking.
Right.
So if we have a board meeting, and I could put this in the language of the note attached to the maps, that we have 12 members on the board. When we have a board meeting, there could be 15 cars.
Yeah, so in your proposal, you said that we'd probably improve parking. We'd make parking next to the greenhouse there, that we could probably get parking for another probably 8 cars there,
I
I
was
guess.
just gonna put it on what's existing,
Existing,
not
yeah,
on
yeah,
what
yeah.
we may do in the future.
Yeah.
We have ample existing without
Yeah.
us building the new
Okay, so we have
access
ample
lot.
existing,
I
yeah.
think we do.
Okay.
I can count room for 15 cars, upper and lower. The
It's
fact that we have
challenging
stairs,
parking.
well, we have steps going up from the back, the lower
Yeah.
parking to the
Agreed.
house.
It's like parking in
And the
San
upper
Francisco.
parking could be for people with disabilities like me, so.
Rather than New
Um,
York City.
I think in one of Don Downs' designs, there was a turnoff as you come down the driveway.
That's what Martin was saying.
Right, and then there was gonna be a pull-in, so you
Does
can
anyone
park in
have
the
a
back
copy
there.
of that?
Yeah.
I think it,
I agree.
I thought you had it.
I have it.
I don't have the Don Downs design. So,
Future.
right.
Okay, can we move on a bit more about money?
Yeah, so that's it, and no word on the housing mitigation grant program, but I understand that Congressman Gibson's coming in on Friday morning. That's federal money, we should ask him when he's here on Friday morning. The change in the Vanguard investment account is in process. I'm waiting for verification from Roberts and Ellie. Adam sent a check for the renewal of the officers and directors liability insurance policy. That's an automatic renewal. And then Adam also spoke to Knack Pavlov about the cost of the audit, and they're checking their billing because they felt that they were already giving us a discount and may have charged us, but they're not sure.
They did not charge us.
They did not charge us, and that's a discounted price.
That's a discounted
That's the
price.
discounted price, okay. So that's the report.
On the Congressman coming, could you say a bit more about that?
We were contacted by him actually a month or two ago. He's gonna be in this neck of the woods with some time to spare. He was gonna come to the station but got snowed out. They've rescheduled it, and I think very conveniently put him coming here during, the second day of our pledge drive. So we're gonna give him a good old Radio Catskill welcome. We're gonna bring him on the air and just ask him, to talk about how important he thinks community media is. And then we're gonna poke him in the ribs and ask him what's going on with the hazard grant.
Now, I know the original contact came through Jeff Hydro. Does Jeff Hydro know this visit is Friday? Is it on our webpage, or do we want people to come?
Jeff Hydro?
No, it didn't come.
Malcolm actually got in touch with him and then sort of handed it off to me.
He knows that there's coming Friday?
I certainly hope so. I guess he might not.
Would you send
Yeah,
him
absolutely.
anyway?
Make sure he becomes a member.
Yeah, be sure he
Gibson, yeah.
becomes a member. Yeah, okay, good.
Make him a member.
All right, moving on to correspondence. The only, John, I think the only correspondence is the CPB letter about the penalty. Was it?
I was also going to read Graham's email, so why don't I do that?
Everyone saw that letter in court trustees.
Yes, we all saw it, okay. Well, I'll include it with the minutes though, because it's important that people's correspondence to the board gets acknowledged. CPB audit determination letter, okay.
This was sent out to everybody, and we have, Adam has worked on a letter of response, and we had some suggestions too from Barbara Greff, and we were wondering if, and it has to be due by the first of the month, something like that, if it would be okay if Adam and I worked on putting those together and sending it off. And maybe sharing it with you before we do that. I mean, we don't want to sit here and write a letter, I don't.
Could a member of the public ask for an explanation of what's being discussed?
What the points are, well, maybe we should read the thing, to somebody, the letter itself.
Yeah, I got lost in that too.
This letter should be attached to the minutes, right, of this. And I would suggest it also is posted on the web, and whether we do anything else with it or not, we have to discuss now. but maybe just to read the letter itself. Can you read it, John?
Dear Mr. Weinreich, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting's CPB, Office of Inspector General, recently completed an examination of grants awarded by CPB to Radio Catskill, Inc., WJFF FM, for fiscal year 2011, report number ASR 1303-1304. CPB management reviewed the OIG's report and recommendations as well as WJFF's responses. Below, please find CPB's determination with regard to those findings and the actions that are required of WJFF to address them. OIG recommendation number 1, on-air announcement. The OIG recommends that WJFF make on-air announcements for at least 3 consecutive days, once each calendar quarter, that explain the station's open meeting policy and provide information on how the public can obtain information regarding specific dates, times, and locations of public meetings. Have the station provide copies of announcements aired as well as the date and time of each airing over the next 4 calendar quarters. CPB recognizes that WJFF has failed to provide evidence of making the required on-air announcements. Required action. CPB requests that WJFF provide CPB no later than August 1st, 2014, a copy of each open meeting policy announcement aired during the period March 1st through June 30th, 2014, and documentation evidencing the dates and times of each broadcast. Recommendation number 2, open meeting announcements. OIG recommends that WJFF announce all open meetings for 7 days prior to the meeting and provide documentation of those announcements to CPB over the next 4 quarters. The CPB determination. The OIG confirmed that WJFF must give notice to the public of open meetings at least 7 days prior to the meetings and not for 7 days. CPB acknowledges that WJFF has not provided evidence of making the necessary announcements. Required action. CPB requests that WJFF provide CPB no later than August 1st, 2014, a list of open meetings the station held during the 4-month period beginning March 1st, 2014, and documentation demonstrating the open meetings were announced at least 7 days in advance of the meetings. OIG recommendation number 3, policies. OIG recommends that WJFF establish written implementing policies to explain how the station will comply with open meetings, open financial records, CAB, EEO, as well as donor list and political activities requirements. CPB determination. As the OIG found, WJFF did not document how the station would comply with open meetings, open financial records, CAB, EEO, and donor list and political activities requirements in CPB's certification requirements. WJFF's lack of compliance is troubling in light of the fact that WJFF assured CPB in November of 2011 that it understood the requirements and would, without delay, take the necessary steps to become compliant. Since WJFF has already provided said documentation and the OIG indicated their acceptance of the same, no additional action is required. Required action, no additional action is required. OIG recommendation number 4, closed meetings. OIG recommends that WJFF ensures that when a meeting is closed in accordance with the exceptions recognized by the Act, WJFF makes a written statement containing the reasons for closing the meeting available to the public within a reasonable time after the closed meeting. CPB agrees that WJFF must comply with the OIG's recommendations concerning closed meetings. Required action. CPB requests that WJFF provide to CPB no later than August 1st, 2014, a list of each meeting closed during the 4-month period beginning March 1st, 2014. Evidence that WJFF made a written statement identifying the reasons for closing each and the manner in which the statement was made available to the public within a reasonable time after the closed meeting. OIG recommendation number 5, penalty. OIG recommends CPB penalize WJFF for not taking appropriate corrective actions to comply with all Act requirements after being instructed by CPB to do so in November of 2011. CPB determination. On or about April 27th, 2013, CPB adopted the implementation of CPB's grantee noncompliance policy in order to support the equitable and fair distribution of CPB's community service grant funds and to encourage compliance with the Communications Act and the applicable CSG general provisions and eligibility criteria. Under the policy, a grantee found non-compliant with the same may be subject to a financial penalty and interest. Taking into consideration the number of compliance issues noted above, CPB's detailed discussion with WJFF in November of 2011, addressing the same issues and recognizing that these are issues WJFF's board should have been made aware of, a penalty of $15,000 is assessed against WJFF. The $15,000 penalty will be added to the CSG's pool and distributed to stations next year. Required action: once CPB has finalized its fiscal year 2014 CSG calculations, which are expected to occur in the spring of 2014, CPB will reduce WJFF's second fiscal year 2014 CSG payment by the $15,000 penalty. Please submit the documents requested above via PDF email attachment to Kate Arno, Director, TV CSG Policy and Review. If you wish CPB to consider additional information relating to this matter, please submit the same to us in writing within 30 days of the date of this correspondence. Failing that, CPB will consider these determinations final, and WJFF will be required to comply with the required actions set forth above. If WJFF fails to provide the above documents to CPB by the dates specified, CPB reserves the right to withhold payment of any CSG funds to WJFF and take any other action CPB deems appropriate until the required actions are resolved to CPB's satisfaction. While we understand the gravity of the required actions, we trust we will be able to work together to resolve them. Sincerely, Jackie Livesey, Vice President, Compliance.
So two things are required, right? One, we can ask them to reduce the penalty and do that in this month, right? That's the first. And then the smaller things that are listed here are due, by August, I think, right? If I've got it right? The specific counting of the meetings we've had. We did have a closed meeting last time, right? Did we do what we were supposed to do? About making it known within a certain...
What is considered a reasonable amount of time, I guess, is a question I have.
Less than a month.
It's part of the minutes.
Pardon?
It's part of the
It
minutes.
will be part of the minutes.
The minutes aren't approved until a month later. I think, aren't they asking for something quicker than that? If you have a closed meeting, maybe not.
I think they indicated it in the thing if you go back.
It just says a reasonable amount of time.
Is that what it said?
Okay, so,
It would be good to get some clarification on that if we can. I'm
Reasonable, it's like when we looked at the bylaws and Lori gave us different opinions, the word reasonable is vague, but I mean, like, personally, I think 60 days is reasonable. You may think 15, but my opinion, 60 days is reasonable. Maybe the fact that this.
We're also required to approve our minutes in a reasonable amount of time.
Right, but maybe the
A month.
fact that, this action, they were completely ignored after November 2011. And maybe if we wanted to make sure we smooth the water, we want to be as short in our reasonable time. I don't know, but.
I think we need to ask the question, if a board meets monthly, it would be reasonable to expect that you would approve the minutes at the next meeting. And that may be sufficient. I think we just need to ask the question.
I think they may also look at the amount of time allocated to the closed session, where, we meet, we start at 6:30 and very often we're here till 10. And we can show by when we go into executive session that 3 or 4 times that we've done that in the year, almost, that we've been meeting, or maybe 3 times we've done it, that our executive sessions are very short in relative time to the open part of the meeting, and we were very specific on the topic that we went in on and we came out on. and that's in compliance. Those are,
Right.
that's governmental standards and best practices. So I don't, I think that, they'll also look at that too. If you go into a meeting and go into executive session and come out hours later, when no one is around.
Versus 10 or 15 minutes
The
later.
CPB's issue with how that was handled in the past, there was not the complaint was that we did not always note the reason for going into meeting. The reason the fault that they found was not that we did not make them available in a reasonable amount of time. The fault that they found was that sometimes board minutes just said entered executive session, period. Didn't say to discuss a personnel matter or to discuss, requiring legal counsel. So that was their finding. So I think that,
We've been pretty specific about that.
yeah,
too.
I think we've done the right,
Yeah.
done the right thing.
So we're saying we should ask them, and we can certainly ask this person. Our practice now is that we list in the minutes that we went into an executive session at 7 and at 7:15 to discuss litigation or a personnel issue. Is that satisfactory? I guess if it was my thinking, I would think it's so important that within a week, we would have put it on the web. We had an executive session on
I think
personnel.
as Mitch suggested too, I mean, to put a document along with, other board documents that expresses it is not an onerous task to just do it and have it done, and especially during this period of March through June, we can certainly do that. But I think the minutes are compliant, but I think it doesn't hurt to go the extra mile at the moment.
So you're saying posted in a special,
I'll just,
Have a
I'll
separate
put a document up following any board meeting where we go into closed session. I'll do it within a few days. Then it's just
So
clear.
should we inquire to be sure that's?
It'd be good to know, because just to know.
I think the misuse of it was at almost every board meeting, there was executive sessions in the past. So somebody's bound to pick up on that one.
Question?
Could I just make a comment? The CPB requirements say a written statement. That's different than saying that where you're saying it in the minutes or in the agenda while you're going, or during the meeting that you're going into executive session. So they're specifically asking for a statement that is separate from that, as far as I'm reading this, and that you use the language that they provide for the reasons, that you don't just say for personnel reasons.
Right, that's,
You know.
we've been using that language in the minutes. We've been trying to be careful about that, but that's what, I'm basically saying this because that covers us to do that. So if there's any,
Double coverage, can't go
Yep.
wrong.
precisely.
Okay, so how will, Adam is working on other things that have to be done by August, and I think we have those practices in order. But the reply to ask for the reduction of the penalty, I think we should go for it, right? We should go.
Yeah.
So,
I think the letter would be strengthened if he showed some of the things that we're already doing too. I think that was in his draft, and that was good to do.
well, we have to do this before the next meeting. So what if Adam and I work on some drafts and send it to a couple of you and get some feedback and then move ahead that way? Would that be all right?
Well,
Or someone,
even if they didn't end up reducing our penalty, it would still make them see that we are a totally different board and that are gonna act differently.
Can I jump in just for, and I have to ask the board's indulgence because it's not the public comment period, but I don't know if I'm gonna stay for the rest of the meeting. But I did write my own version of a appeal letter because I felt, and no one asked me to do it, I just feel strongly that the donor point of view and the community point of view should be very strongly reflected. And because of some of the work that Christine and Ann and I did on the FCC recertification of the license, et cetera, and other discussions I've had with Adam, is that there is kind of a informal compliance panel. I'm calling it a panel to avoid using the word committee. That's been working on different issues, bylaws, the FCC, and I had in this draft I had mentioned that we should say we redid our whole bylaws with very much this in mind, and that maybe the board would consider making the compliance panel, whatever you want to call it, a formalized part of what happens at WJFF. And that there should be, and I'm recommending to the board, as a member of the public, as a donor who really is gonna have to make up that gap in the funding due to that penalty, that there be training for anyone that is involved with this radio station, the Board of Trustees, the Community Advisory Board, the Program Committee, the on-air people and those that are not on the air, to once a year, whether it's a webinar or an in-person training on compliance, CPB, FCC, whatever other compliance issues there are. There was an excellent webinar, I think Midge and Sonia, you looked at it too, and so did I, open to the public on the NFCB site, very much to the point of the new and more stringent approach that the CPB has taken to compliance issues. And that date, April 27th, 2013, 1 week after this board, except for one person, resigned, I don't think is a very big coincidence. I think what happened at this station did raise some awareness, and I know it did in the public radio community, and the CPB, I think, came here because of that. So, I think we should take this, whatever we can say to the CPB in that letter, that we have gone above and beyond even anything you're asking of us here, and take this that seriously, I think can only be to our benefit.
I think you're saying donor and member, maybe we want to use the word member, because I'll just say right out front that as a member, I don't like the fact that my membership is being used for disregard of the law, flagrant disregard of law. So if somewhere in a letter it says that in some ways the wrong people are being penalized, I don't mean to use that phrase, but in fact the wrong people are being penalized because hardworking, donating money, coming in, volunteering, donating hours and time, those people are being hurt by this penalty, and nobody here caused the injury. I don't know if that would matter to them, but in terms of hurting the membership, if the penalty could be reduced.
Yeah, so we will aim to reduce the penalty, and I think try to make a really good case and mention some of the things that you said and pass it around so we can move this forward. There is one other thing. I wonder if you would agree that I would like to send this letter that we received from them to the 8 board members who were as trustees at the time this happened. I have spoken individually on the telephone to 2 of them who are still active volunteers now, Deborah Chandler and on the telephone, and Fern through some email. And I just wanted to be sure that sits well with you too. I think that people should know the extent, not that they go to the webpage, but they get this in with a short letter saying, here's what we've got, and we are trying to reduce the penalty. And we don't want them to do anything particularly, but just to be aware of what happened. Well, no, I know what she's thinking. Send in a check! But I don't know whether any discussion about that, or is that okay? If I can just sign it with my name, or I can just say it on behalf of the Board of Trustees, or.
Are you sending it to the previous manager too?
Pardon?
Are you sending it to the previous manager or recommending?
Yes.
It's a good idea, so it establishes. In the newspapers, when all this happened, they said that that in their opinion, they were in full compliance several times. It was stated in the paper.
I think we would like you to send it on behalf of the board.
I would like you to send it on behalf of the board.
Okay? Yep. And we will put this up on the web, the letter on the web Barbara.
I just have a question going back to Barbara's comments. I don't know that there is necessarily, a mechanism for doing this, but is there any benefit to having Barbara or any other member of the public who cares to comment on, the penalty and potentially asking, that the penalty be reduced, letters in support of our letter, in effect?
There's no reason why there just has to be one letter.
I mean, it's certainly up to any member of the public to, you know, say what they care to say, but, you know,
Would it be appropriate that, once this letter goes out, jumping on your idea, to say that to the public, if you want to comment, this is the address or whatever? Is that appropriate or inappropriate?
The window for comment is 30 days. We're already a little ways into that.
Right.
That just means that if we were to do something like that, we would need to inform the public of what's happening, make the case to them, and appeal to them to write a letter. And we would just need to decide, you know, do they send those letters individually, or do they send them to us and we package that with our appeal?
But if we're gonna put this up on the website, can't it be just simply there with a note to the public, here it is, if you care to comment, this is where you would write, not?
And you have to do it by a certain date.
Yeah, right, well, and we're real short on.
And
Yeah.
perhaps some of the previous board members would be some of that comment,
Could be.
or the previous
I mean,
manager.
maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe it's just opening a door that we
Yeah,
don't,
Can I say
want
something?
open.
If we can back up to the previous issue, sending the letter out, it strikes me as petty and vindictive, and revenge is a dish best tasted cold, and you know what? We need to move on. And it would be my opinion that those folks made the decisions they made for the reasons they made them. They don't regret them. If they did, they have not expressed that, and we need to be bigger than that. And that would be my opinion. Forget it, move on. We can't change it. Change that which you can change. And I don't like it. It doesn't, I'm trying to think of a word that's not old-fashioned to describe it. It just smacks to me of, you know, yeah, we'll stick you in the eye. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's my opinion, but that's the way I felt about it when it came up, and I didn't say anything, and now that we're back to discussing it again. Yeah, just let me finish, because I've got a head cold, it's hard for me to think. It really is, and it also it's getting late. The word I want to use is unseemly, and it's an old-fashioned word, but there it is, and that's my own feeling about it. I think we need to move on. The troubles were the troubles. We can't do anything about it. We need to move on and not have troubles.
Well, Mike, if some of us felt differently, would you be in agreement if some of us signed it and some of us didn't, or, you know?
I will go along with every board's
But I'm saying
decisions.
you wouldn't have to.
I just wanted to express my feeling.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If it's a board action, it's a board action, and I support the board's action. But it's just that my feeling is I would caution the board that I have reservations about it. That's all. Yeah.
I have similar reservations. I guess my question is, what purpose
Yeah.
is this serving?
What good will it do?
Well, what do we want to communicate, or what is it going to
Yeah.
serve? How, you know, I mean, is it just a need to get back at, or is it gonna be healthy to do this for the station? I mean, or for us? That's kind of what my question is.
I have to speak as a member of the public,
Mhm.
okay? As a member of the public who went to that board, after members of the public had gone to that board for several years, pointing out the violations of the CPV requirements, that I think that I don't consider it revenge or anything petty. This is called accountability. This is called accountability, and this is a recognition by this board that the statements that were made were untrue. They were untrue. The board that sat in your place and looked at the CPB requirements and said, we are in compliance, we are in compliance. And the station manager that sat there and said, I had a little chat with the CPB. When the CPB obviously did not think they were having a chat. They were instructing the station manager to follow the regulations of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I think that those people need to be given notice that it is recognized that what they said was untrue. I think it's a responsibility of this board to do that. And you know, and I also want to say, I think, considering that the penalty could have been the entire amount of the grant. And that was in the Corporation for Public Broadcasting's purview to take every cent that was paid based on untrue statements and signatures that were provided to them. I think everybody should be feeling relieved that you got such a small penalty.
That's true. The other point would be, is you're being fined for going through a stop sign when the previous board took down the stop sign. I mean, it's simple as that, and that should be noted to both, to both the previous board and to the CPB.
But when you tell it to the cop, you're gonna get the ticket anyway.
Yeah, it's sins of the fathers. I mean, I hear you, Ann. I think ultimately sometime we have to move on, that's all.
I don't see anything
Yeah.
wrong with,
When it was
advising.
clear the amount of payment was made, many of our volunteers said to me, why don't we just go against that? And we decided it would cause too much division. It was a great deal of money for 2 years of health insurance, 4 months severance pay, which was not considered at all. I mean, it was done in the twinkling of an eye, which is costing us $75,000. I mean, it's a great deal of money.
More than that.
Anyway, so here we are.
Well, I don't think it's too bad to at least let them know that this is the consequences of the actions that they made. I don't see how that we are lingering on it. I think we should just let them be aware that this is what the mess you got us into, and we're gonna have to pay now for your mistakes. So, I don't see anything wrong with at least, maybe not using those words, but just letting them know that this is what happened.
Should we take a vote on this?
Should we put into a motion whether or not to send the letter? Is that what we're?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
Adam had a comment too.
Adam?
No, I got it out there.
Could I ask a member of the public also to say something? I understand what you're saying, Mike, but I actually think that sending the letter is part of moving on. If you leave a lot of unfinished business around this, I think that then it's just unfinished business and you really can't move on appropriately. And it shouldn't escape, the board you do sign annually that you are in compliance. And I don't know what that form looks like, I bet Adam does, but in that training webinar that, I don't know, only a handful of you saw, but the presenter, who was Bob Winteringham, just only recently retired from the CPB, he quite came right up to the line of, it was very informal, but of very clearly underscoring what it means when a board signs that document that says we are in compliance. He didn't say that it was fraud if you did not, but I bet that document does. It's public money, it's federal money, it comes from the people of the nation, not just of this community. So I think that's an important aspect of this. So when we say we do want to move on, and I can completely agree with that, but I've had different discussions with members of the board about this idea of moving on, but I think the moving on part includes putting a period on the end of these different sentences that have been started. So, and I think there's still more to be dealt with. I think there's feelings of hurt and anger over this, and this severance package that is continuing to be paid with donor money. I think there's a lot of, I think moving on is good, but I think finishing the job is more important.
And these truth and reconciliation things, the truth always comes out. Maybe there's not serious penalties for things, but everybody says, yeah, I participated in that thing. So I think they should know.
It's instructional for everybody.
Okay,
This whole thing.
I move that we ask either the president or the secretary to forward this letter with a cover to the former members of the board, and then I think we need to move on with the agenda.
Any discussion? All in favor? So John and I will work on the letter and something simple. Okay. No other correspondence. Program committee, they are not here, but they have a meeting planned.
Voted anyway.
That wasn't a motion and a vote, was it? Oh.
Sonia, just so it happens, because I'm gonna lose, but you need to hold the vote.
On this motion that Barbara made, seconded by Midge, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, one opposed.
Abstain.
One abstain, Joel, and one opposed. So it carries. Program committee, we will move on from that, I think. And
Does anybody know, they changed their meeting 3 times, anybody know the date?
I think it's the 7th,
Like, that's CAB.
program committee.
Program committee?
Oh, I don't know the program committee.
Okay, 'cause they
I'm
changed-
aiming for no more than 15 minutes. We're getting out of here,
We'll get
okay?
out of here.
Okay, fundraising and community outreach, Barbara. Oh, my
Yay.
God. Martin.
The only thing in facilities is that Adam asked for the shower and the water to be turned back up at the greenhouse so he can stay there possibly over the next, over the fundraiser. The only,
The toilet would be important.
the toilet and the shower and everything, yeah. And the water, you turn the water on.
We wanna be specific here.
And you gotta have the heat on for that too.
Adam, you're welcome
So-
to stay at my house if you.
See, that may be, I just remember from last year when the toilet froze and the plumbing broke from not being shut off and emptied out properly. There's a whole shutdown procedure to do this. It may be better to have Adam drive to Liberty and stay in a motel than to try to keep that place open for a couple of days. Or the other thing we talked about last week was having a cot with the air mattress in the office, you know, I mean.
I don't think you're in that much peril.
No,
No.
it's not.
We can turn, all we gotta do is turn the water on.
Something's funny with the shower.
Okay.
And as far as the boiler's safe, because it has antifreeze in it. And if, you know, because you're gonna have to turn the boiler back on when you turn the water on. Right, just keep it at, 50, 52.
The water heater is,
Yeah.
you
it's
dr-
okay.
you drain
You're in
that?
the basement.
it's drained? It's drained?
It's drained right now.
Okay, so when it's filled up, it's gotta get redrained when it's over.
Well, yeah, but it's also
But
the end of
we're like
March.
in spring, we're not,
Okay.
when it's in a basement.
Well,
So you don't have that, it usually stays at a certain temperature.
Adam just has to keep taking shots.
That's it.
And he may need another shower,
Well, it's Andrea who stays there so
So I don't think
often, and
that's
I
an
think
issue
she
as
needs
far
much
as-
better facilities, but,
Okay.
This bar and then.
okay.
towards spring.
Any other old business that we have? New business?
On old business, we have this policy-making procedure, and it became kind of clear in our discussion about these bylaws. Are we ready to vote that language in, or should we give it another
Yes.
month? I mean, it felt like this 30 days seemed like it could be, like maybe we need more thinking, or are we ready to vote?
I was ready last month, so
We had to follow the policy.
Wait, but, we had a delayed meeting, so it's technically not 30 days, from our last meeting because we
It will
had
be,
snowed out. So it's a shorter period of time between our February meeting and our March meeting, because we met like at the end of February, as I recall.
Right.
So let's wait
So
until the
let's
next.
wait
Let's-
until the next meeting, and then
let's
we'll
defer.
certainly have our 30 days,
And let's
that
all,
we're
like, I'll send it back around so
proposing?
people can,
Okay.
it's on the website too, but we
Thanks.
should really look at it and
we don't wanna
think about it, 'cause I think
violate our
it-
policy before we enact,
before we have it- before we
Right,
have it.
our first act is to violate it.
At the last meeting, there was another draft of the mission statement. Was there an action? I don't
No,
remember.
there was not an action.
Okay, so that's still on old business that we need to address
Mhm.
next time.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then the staffing would be the other one, and we're very close to putting the word out, so I think
Okay.
we just need to.
Staffing stands, we've got a very good draft of the Adams position. We've sent Lori the letter, legal letter of this is the agreement with you, and we just did that a day or two ago, and we'll get that back from her. And on the other position, the program person, where are we on that one?
John?
Sure. We've got a pretty solid draft. I think my feeling was, and didn't have a chance to hear back from others of this, work group, but that we need to actually try to get a few of us together with Adam to go over it and make sure everything really adds up, and then we can start posting it. But
Okay, can we say what's the date we'll send it out? When will it be going out? Let's not wait a whole other month.
we won't wait another month, but we're in the middle of a fund drive, so
So
it
say by
might
the
be.
10th or so, of April, it will go out
Sure.
sometime in early April.
Go out meaning get posted?
Posted.
Good.
Okay, on that, I don't know if this is new or old business. We have the election will be coming up. We need a nominating committee to consider filling trustee positions and perhaps increase some, or we will. I think that the people are serving 1 year, if I've got it right. John is willing to stay on, and Tasa, yes, I think, and Barbara as well, and Kevin as well. So those three. We have Steve's position, which is through the volunteer track, and we have then we have the possibility of adding other members if we want to. So if we don't want to add people, we don't need a nominating committee, but if we want to.
Am I right that there are 2 volunteer seats up for election this time again?
Because of Kevin,
Kevin is staying.
but not as a volunteer.
So does Kevin,
In a 2-year term,
Kevin had a 1-year
a
term.
1-year term.
So
So
Kevin
he
would
would
be
run again.
running again as a volunteer?
or would he be reappointed as a regular board member?
Well, yeah, could he be running for the Steve Harris seat, since Steve is resigning
But
to
they're
move
both
away?
But they're both open.
But they're
There's
both
2 seats,
volunteers.
there's 2 seats.
Oh, sorry.
Simplest thing would be for the board to nominate him as a board member.
But then that would mean that we are looking for 2
volunteers.
volunteer
Two volunteers.
candidates, 2 or more.
Well, if a person is on the board, I mean, we're saying that Tasa and the 2 of you, we're saying stay for a 3-year term. I think it would be 1 and 3, and then so we still have the staggered things. Would that be the same for the volunteer elected person or not? I don't know.
So the question is, does the volunteer person have to get re-voted by the volunteers every 3 years? Right, so
At
no,
the end of their term.
yeah. So can we appoint Kevin, or does he have to be re-elected by the volunteers?
I think you can appoint whoever you want, so you can definitely appoint Kevin.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
But does Kevin care about whether he's a volunteer elected trustee or a board elected trustee? I don't know.
I don't think it's that different.
He would have to win the election.
A
to-
vote is a vote is a vote, right, after an election.
Right.
But Pat, to go back to your point, we're gonna then, the next people, like, if Tasa is gonna continue her term, then we're assigning her a 3-year term, right? Because that's how we go in the cycle, after the 1 year we go
Right,
3?
Right.
Okay.
And then,
Well-
the volunteers that we're choosing will run for one-year terms, right?
1-year terms, but
Mhm.
if Kevin becomes a
No.
regular member, he would start a 3-year
3-year
cycle.
term.
Everybody would start.
Volunteer terms are normally 3 years. It was just the
Oh, for
weirdness
the
of
first
our
year?
of
Oh,
our
okay.
stagger it.
Oh, okay.
filling out the whole board
Got
that
it,
we
got
had
it,
to
got it, okay,
assign some staggered,
okay.
shorter terms to people. So
So what does that mean then?
I think we should maybe a nominating committee just to sort all these little bits out,
the little
even if
bits
it's
out.
just a couple people to
Well,
Are people whose terms are up and, they're, are such people, ineligible to serve on a nominating committee? Because if so, that's a number of us here.
Oh, so you couldn't
Right.
serve on
I'm
Yeah.
asking the question,
Yeah.
should those of us whose terms are coming to an end?
Probably not, I mean.
Probably not.
Yeah.
No, that's what we said, when we talked about it, Kurt was not sure that he could continue as vice president, and so, we thought that he would be a good person if that was the case, to be on the nominating committee, because then we'll have to find a vice president, so, but we haven't had a definitive answer from him at this point.
He wasn't able to be here tonight. He said he would like to address the board about that next time. I think, yeah.
Just to nominate the nominating committee.
We do,
The committee on committees.
but we said 3 people at the executive committee meeting.
That are not in running.
Right.
So who is not running? Can't be you, can't be you.
Right, but
Can be me, I guess.
we did mention Barbara specifically because she kind of was the linchpin for the nominating committee for all of us when, last year.
Barbara Graff.
Barbara Graff as one person. And then, if John is not leaving, then, but you're
But
one of
I'm-
the one-year
I'm-
terms. So then let's put Kurt on there, assuming that he's, now you can put me on it, I have a 3-year term.
I think we should maybe not give Kurt any more tasks.
Okay,
I have a 3-year term too, so I don't.
yeah, so I don't
Yeah.
care, so put me on there.
Oh, so Pat, okay.
Is that enough then?
It's
Who do we
mostly
have?
sorting out.
It's sorting out some
Just
stuff.
voting on
Yeah.
it. So it's the two of you?
That's fine.
Two
And
is enough?
two should be enough.
I think it would be, you know, I think there was a little survey that I did back a while ago, in terms of skills that we feel that we have and therefore skills that we don't feel that we have. If we can find some folks that have some of those missing skills, I think it would benefit us to expand the board by a couple.
I think so too. I think it's good. I do think so too.
So I can dig out that list of what we have and what we don't have for you
Okay.
guys to look at.
Anything else under the old business, new business, new business?
We needed to pass a resolution, I think, on moving the meeting to 4/26.
Yes. A motion, please, to move the meeting to 4:26. Mike makes it, and it's and seconded. Any discussion? Now we can vote on it.
Did we,
Any
wait, did
vote?
we get a nominating committee?
Yes, we did, the two of you.
Okay, I was,
The two of you, pay attention.
I'm paying attention, but I didn't know anybody said that,
I mean, should we make
because
that a motion
he usually
to-
puts the
Yes.
notes out, so
All right,
that's.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to reform the nominating committee comprised of Pat and Midge at this point.
Second,
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, okay. Okay, John, I've been trying to take down some action steps. Let me just see if you have them, or do you?
We need to go back to the moving of the meeting.
Oh, yeah,
All
okay.
in favor of that?
All in favor of moving the meeting till Saturday with food and wine and wonderful treats, so you'll all be happy? Okay.
At 10 o'clock in the morning? Oh, mimosas,
Oh, my-
Bloody Mary.
What a group. Okay. Okay. Hi. And
Talk to Amy about doing a farm-to-table breakfast, what meeting on the 26th?
Waffles and scrambled eggs.
There you go.
okay, so, Adam, that has to be put out, the announcement of that
Right,
meeting.
We've already announced the meeting, we'll make a change.
Yeah.
We're well within the.
Yeah, and I will change this.
And location?
I gotta find the location. I don't know if we can,
Basically, the moment you give me a location, well,
we have time. Okay, on the action steps, John, do you wanna,
You know, I can look through here. And
Well, we're gonna do, sections 1 to 6 will be posted on the web now. We've approved it, and then we're gonna do 7 to the end. We said we would have it to everyone and posted, and that comments will be due, I think, on the 10th, I think. And then we have a meeting on the 26th, a public meeting to go over it. A regular board meeting with other things, too. That's sort of what I have about the action steps.
CPB letter out.
Pardon?
CPB letter out.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe Kevin could tell us about the party or whatever it is, the arts thing.
It's kind of a cultural event, and we're calling it the Spring Gathering. And so far we have, Elizabeth Rose, who's having about 11 singer-songwriters come start kicking it off at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. And that will be followed by Indio, who is a Latino performer. And then we have Paul Lounsbury, and fiddler and hammer dulcimer, some significant people there. Keith Edwards will be coming, and then Aldo with Sparrow, Little Sparrow, will be coming on, along with a few other groups that we haven't yet identified. Sarah Underhill will be coming at 2, and this was like pretty much throughout the whole day. Tassa has 8th? And you have all that for me?
Yeah, I got that.
Well, what I'm trying to do right now is I'm gathering the bios of the various people, performers and writers and artists that are going to be attending this. And it's 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. And so that, what I would hope to use during the pledge drive, we can have a folder with the event, the activity, which is whether it be the art circle or authors roundtable or poet circle, a bunch of poets that'll be coming, and then have their bios with that, and so we can, make mention of that if we need something to talk about during the pledge drive, and that'll be available soon. I'm still waiting on for other bios to come in.
And this is all gonna happen at the station?
Yes, it'll all happen at the station. We're gonna use the greenhouse as a staging area, for them to, tune up, whatever. We have parking areas. Donna across the street, who used to have a florist shop and now has a rather large driveway and parking area.
And no snow.
She said that we can use the driveway there. I talked to Vitas, the farm stand, and he said he'll clear the trailers out of the way, and we can have the whole parking area there. And I think that should do it. And what we want to do is just make sure that we keep a clear area from going down the driveway to the back of the studio, so if people have instruments and things like that, they have to unload, they can do that.
Okay,
Just
if
keep
there
that
is
So-
anything else, then we have comments from the public.
Well, first comment I have is, and this will all be broadcast. It's gonna be broadcast continuously. I'm trying to understand. That all these performers are gonna be here, and it's gonna be on air, okay. I just didn't get that, whether it was just an event that was happening there, or if it was gonna be on air. And people can mill around.
Yes, we are so lucky. We got Rocky for the arts, he'll be moderating, as well as Bradley Duguid. So that both of them, we have both directors of the Catskill Arts Society and the Delaware Valley Arts Alliance, as well as the director of the opera, DVO, in attendance. So we're making some really good outreach here to other organizations.
And we're gonna continue pitching during this weekend, right?
Unless we've met our goal in space.
Right. And I don't know, there was some talk about the concert window, is that it? Did you?
Yeah, having an opportunity to, we'll set a laptop with a webcam up and we'll point it at the performers. And there's this great online service where folks can log in and watch and actually send money through this service. And also kind of participate by making little comments, and it seems like a great, very easy, just set it and forget it. You set this laptop up and we'll put a link on our homepage, and then all throughout the day you can just say, go to the JFF homepage, right at the top, click the thing, boom, you'll start seeing what's going on. Someone had suggested we do that for the whole pledge drive, but I think we'll just save it. It's video and audio.
It's quite an innovation in doing this. I think, thank you very much for
in
fixing it out, Andrea, and those working on the performance.
I mean, I think it sounds great, because I'm then assuming we're gonna be pitching, like, when one act is changing to the
Right.
next act, then we're gonna just say, and if you love this, become a member, we love them, become a member, so we'll do our pitching.
Unless we've met our goal, and I think that then we'll just give them a break.
I think so too.
Yeah, my thought was if we,
they may not want a break.
right. Well, we can roll some music in the background in between. It just, I think if we I don't want to count any unhatched chickens, but if we make our goal by then, I think we do say uninterrupted programming the moment we meet our goal, and I think we'll stand by that if we get there.
And Barbara deserves a lot of credit because she kind of kicked this thing off.
You're doing a great job.
You got some of the big heavy hitters here.
Okay,
So,
we have comments from the public.
Yeah,
We'll
one
find-
comment. You said that we're going to call this a membership drive, and that we're gonna be talking about members and have goals in terms of members. Is there a dollar amount the board in its bylaws has the role and responsibility for setting membership levels. Are these membership levels set? Are they gonna be on the form? Are they gonna be discussed with the people who call up?
Adam, or Barbara?
I'm sort of at a loss on this one. I feel like we've sort of abandoned the membership levels thing. John, do you have something to
I'll
say?
make a motion that a donation of any amount makes you a member of WJFF.
Well, can we talk about this for a second? I mean, I just like
Well, we don't
the,
even have a second, so I don't know.
oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted it too much.
Okay.
Okay, discussion?
I think Anne's asking a very good question, and I don't think that we should just do an off-the-cuff response. I would ask that we take some time to consider this, you know, in the committee, and, you know, perhaps bring back recommendations after, you know, consultation.
I can just also about guarantee that no matter how often we write membership drive on the whiteboard, at least half the volunteers are gonna call pledge drive. I mean, the same way we call premiums.
Make a cultural shift, that's fine.
Right.
We can live, as long as we don't,
Well, I
yeah.
think it's,
So
you
you're
know,
suggesting, Barbara, that your committee will think about that, and by the next time we meet, we will have some data about members.
I think it's a great point, and I like John's suggestion.
Yeah, it wasn't meant
but
to be
let's-
totally
But let's
flippant.
just, let's just think about it before we.
May I point out that there's an online survey that was put on the webpage,
Yes.
and it states explicitly, it says, are you a member, a donation above $40? So that's explicitly put on our website right now.
Right.
Um,
And that's based on what we have had on the buck slips that have gone out historically.
Is this, what does the slip say that you fill out?
Slips don't have any
Amount.
amount. It's
They
just
did a while back.
the
and
book
that's-
slips do, but not the forms that we'll fill out during the drive.
I like the old way. Forgive me for liking the old way, but I liked the old way with suggested membership, household membership, student membership, senior membership, unemployed, employed, millionaire, you know. Why? Yes, because I like the idea that everybody can participate within their own, and it's between you and whatever. So it just, it's personal.
So if you give $25, does that make you a senior?
I don't care if you're a junior. I mean, you know, I'm
Well, I
just saying.
think that's-
I don't think,
Yeah,
I really don't
that's-
think we
yeah.
can get this at this time.
Yeah.
I do wonder, is there a way we can make the meeting shorter? When I put the agenda together, I realize this is so long. I don't know what to cut out, and we don't go on and on with discussion, and you always hang in to discuss things, and people make comments, but it's still a long meeting. Any ideas? Yeah.
I thought about that after you sent out the email this morning, so we'll prolong the meeting a little bit while I talk about it. I think we're going through growing pains, and that you don't do bylaw changes all the time. And I think that it should get better as we go along. We spent a lot of time in the last couple of meetings on the Community Advisory Board. Hopefully that will get to a better place. And while I'm sure other things will come up, my expectation would be that ultimately the meetings will get a little bit shorter. I think we're also pretty liberal about what we take as public comment, and we don't restrict it to the time periods when it's supposed to be. I don't know that I want to. It seems to work, but I think that does sometimes slow you down a little bit. But I think that we just need to maybe just take a breath and say, let's see what happens in the next 6 months to a year. It should get better. We're not going to be handling all these weighty matters.
And I don't think that, if we could wrap up by 9, I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah.
And I think we're almost there.
Yeah, it's better than it was.
But I have to ask again, I'm going to be answering the phone. We're calling it a membership drive. It's a logical question for a person to ask. How do you become a member? Are you a member? Are you renewing your membership? These are all questions you ask when you have a member. So what are we going to say when we pick up the phone and there's a person on the other end of the line and we're asking about their membership?
I think we're asking, how much would you like to donate? Isn't that what we, isn't that our script of what we've asked in the past?
I don't know.
I remember saying, are you a member? Are you renewing your membership?
And the script that we worked with on the last couple of pledge drives that said, how much would you like to donate?
Yeah.
You know
Right.
what, I must confess what I do is I always pick a big amount.
Always pick what?
A big amount. I say, if they say, well, I don't know. I say, well, how about $75? I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
How much would you like to?
If they, but this is a dilemma, yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of times people's donations are predicated on premiums too. I want the
Yeah.
XYZ, so that's how much?
Adam's
I want the book,
helicopter
I want the
license.
record.
We were starting tomorrow. I mean,
Right, we have 9 hours to make this decision.
yeah, and let's see how it goes day one and day two, and get, you know, think your best oversight to it.
That to be a member, you have to, like you had before, that a member is $40 or more.
But that was, we also had a senior or student level of 25 or 30.
I sort of feel like a member is someone who donates during a pledge drive, whether that's $1 or $10 or $100 or $1,000. If you come to a station event, if you buy a ticket for food stock, that does not make you a member. You've received something in exchange for your donation. But if you make a selfless donation to the station, I think you're a member.
That's good. Our new policy.
Well,
And tomorrow, we will be saying, today we've had 20 members call in. 20 members, or whatever it is. Okay, I think we have to revisit this
My only
again.
comment is that you should take down the listener survey, because it has erroneous information on it then.
okay,
It says-
we could also update that survey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think just,
because-
just take out the, exclude on.
Okay, a motion to adjourn, please?
I didn't make that motion.
Good.
You would you?
Barbara, would anybody like to vote? Any discussion? Anybody like to vote on that?
I think we should discuss it.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much.